Chapter 752. Lei Xingfeng was very clear about the most important restriction nodes in the surroundings. Once these restriction nodes were touched, they would truly increase the power of the restriction. They could even cause the restriction to explode and concentrate its power. There were a total of dozens of restriction nodes. Lei Xingfeng attacked them one by one with his sword seal. Instantly, the star beast knew that something was wrong. The surrounding flames increased in power once again. Ropes formed by flames began to lash out like whips, especially the flame ropes that targeted its limbs and tail. They made the star beast feel extremely awkward because its movements were immediately restricted. It had to be known that most of the nodes that were touched were ordinary nodes. As for the key nodes, as long as one was touched, it would cause a strong backlash from the restriction. Moreover, Lei Xingfeng had consciously attacked dozens of key nodes in succession, causing the entire restriction to go berserk. This was like overdrawing all of its power in an instant. Because Lei Xingfeng was standing on an empty spot, the restriction's power was concentrated on the star beast that was still in the restriction. The star beast was really sullen. When it saw Lei Xingfeng in the empty space without flames, it wanted to run over to avoid being burned by the flames. However, it didn't expect that before it could do so, the restriction's power would suddenly erupt. Its power was at least several times stronger than before. Moreover, it was still increasing rapidly. The star beast was almost unable to withstand it. This wasn't the end of it. In addition to the restriction's power, Lei Xingfeng had also begun to attack. His first attack was a thunderous attack. Countless lightning bolts thrusted towards the star beast. These lightning bolts might not be able to kill the star beast, but they successfully destroyed the star beast's defense and allowed the restriction's flames to seep in. A mournful roar sounded. The star beast that could reach this place wasn't stupid. When it saw that something was wrong, it turned around and ran. However, the star beast was controlled by the restriction's flame ropes. Even if it turned around with difficulty, it would be very difficult for it to escape. At this moment, Lei Xingfeng and the restriction's power attacked at the same time. The pain caused the star beast to inevitably go crazy. With its strength, it could have safely entered and exited this large-scale restriction as long as it was a little more careful. This experience was already deeply ingrained in its mind. One must know that it had broken through many restrictions in the past. The only thing it didn't expect was that there was a human here. That wasn't scary. Adult star beasts were never afraid of humans. However, the human in front of it was completely different. Not only was his strength okay, the most important thing was that he could control the restriction and make it explode. The star beast couldn't resist at all and could only run away. However, even if it wanted to escape, it now discovered that it was incomparably difficult. This caused it to be terrified and enraged. It began to struggle madly and let out miserable shrieks one after another. It was very difficult for it to escape. It was less than 100 meters away, and countless attacks landed on its body. In fact, this was also the wrong choice. It couldn't escape at all, and it shouldn't have. Instead, it desperately ran towards the open space where Lei Xingfeng was. This was its true choice. The only safe place here was the land under Lei Xingfeng's feet. It was enough for the star beast to slow down. However, it was this choice that caused the star beast to fall into complete despair. Lei Xingfeng was also crazy. He knew that he had to kill the star beast. The best way to provoke an enemy was to kill it. Moreover, this place was the best place to kill. Although Lei Xingfeng's thunder and lightning couldn't kill the star beast, with the addition of the restriction and the thunder and lightning that could paralyze the opponent, the star beast couldn't move. This was enough. With the power of the restriction, it would be exhausted to death. Until now, Lei Xingfeng still didn't know what attribute this star beast was. However, he often saw a yellow brilliance or even a golden brilliance. He thought that it was a metal attribute star beast. After attacking for a while, he discovered that this star beast was actually an earth attribute star beast. No wonder its resistance was so strong and could withstand so many attacks. Lei Xingfeng not only attacked with thunder and lightning, but also with sword seals. The combination of the two was extremely powerful. This was the rhythm of fighting until death. With Lei Xingfeng's experience, If he let the star beast turn around now, he wouldn't be able to kill it even if he wanted to. Xian Feng missed Ma Zhang dearly. If Ma Zhang was by his side, this star beast would be dead for sure. With Ma Zhang's help, Xian Feng would have the advantage of suppressing everything. Now, he was only lacking a bit. He was just one breath away from killing the star beast. Lei Xingfeng didn't dare to hold back. He attacked with all his might. Unfortunately, due to the restriction, his real body couldn't attack the star beast. The real body's attack was the real powerful attack. Lei Xingfeng released even thicker lightning. Relying on Lei Yin, his attacks became sharper and sharper. The star beast's roar became even more urgent. It was filled with fear because it found that it was very difficult to move. This was especially so when the bolts of lightning nailed it to the ground. Its four limbs and huge tail were unable to move. Furthermore, the flames and lightning were even more concentrated on its body. Lei Xingfeng was also anxious. He didn't expect this star beast to be so difficult to deal with. After enduring the attacks for 2 hours, it was still able to hold on. With such powerful attacks, even Lei Xingfeng's Lei Yin had used up a portion of its energy reserves, forcing him to replenish it temporarily. As Lei Xingfeng's Lei Yin recovered, its attack power increased again. The star beast finally couldn't hold on any longer. The flames began to invade its body. In an instant, the star beast became a huge torch and burned crazily. Lei Xingfeng finally stopped. However, he found that the result of burning like this was that he couldn't get anything. This was a huge loss. As the star beast stopped struggling, the restriction's power gradually decreased. However, the flames on the star beast's body grew bigger and bigger. Lei Xingfeng smelled a strong fragrance of meat. Time passed slowly. Lei Xingfeng didn't want to enter the restriction at all. The restriction nodes and the restriction were moving chaotically. There was no way to enter without triggering the restriction. He could only wait for the restriction to completely calm down. With a loud bang, the star beast was completely prostrated on the ground. The flames suddenly rose. The entire restriction was activated again. Another large pile of flames hit the star beast. After a while, the restriction calmed down a little. Lei Xingfeng withdrew his real body and slowly sat down to wait. After waiting for about half a day, the entire restriction was completely restored. The flames on the star beast's body were extinguished. Lei Xingfeng got up and carefully avoided the restriction nodes. He slowly approached the star beast's corpse. The star beast was in a miserable state. Its entire body was charred black. Some parts had been burned to ashes. However, there were still many good things left. Lei Xingfeng was quite satisfied. Since it wasn't completely burned, it was his gain. Lei Xingfeng used a method this time. He directly brought the star beast's corpse back to the mirror realm. In an empty field in the mirror realm, a charred star beast suddenly appeared. Lei Xingfeng appeared. He waved to a few stunned cultivators and said, "Go and inform everyone to come over." Those cultivators naturally recognized Lei Xingfeng. They bowed and flew out to call for others. In a few minutes, everyone rushed over. Wu Yang, Guqi, and Thunderstorm were at the front. The others followed. Before the large group of people saw Lei Xingfeng, they saw the star beast's corpse that was hundreds of meters long. They were all amazed. Lei Xingfeng said, "This is an adult earth element star beast. It just died not long ago. Ancestor, master, you can organize the harvest. Put the essence aside first. You can deal with the rest as you see fit." Wu Yang stuttered. He said this is a star beast. It wasn't that he had never seen a star beast before, but it was his first time seeing such a huge one. He knew that this thing was a treasure, especially for the disciples of the secret sections. This thing was simply a super treasure. For people at Lei Xingfeng's level, there were indeed some useful things on the star beast, but they weren't necessary. The materials they needed were of a higher level. This star beast was useful to everyone. The reason why Lei Xingfeng didn't want to divide it himself was that he didn't care too much about it. He didn't have the time or energy to spend on it. Giving it to the secret sects would save him a lot of trouble. There were more things to collect in the fantasy sky realm. Lei Xingfeng exchanged a few words and immediately left the mirror realm. He returned to his original position, hoping to collect more strange flames. Soon, he found a place where the restriction nodes were concentrated. After spending some time, Lei Xingfeng entered. Only then did he realize that the strange flames had disappeared. After walking through a few places, Lei Xingfeng understood that the restriction explosion had consumed most of the strange flames. It was really a pity. He could only give up. He turned around and walked to the edge of the restriction before stepping out. In an instant, a force pushed him out. After a while, Lei Xingfeng stepped onto a small island. There was only a small empty space around him, and it was still surrounded by restrictions. After looking carefully, Lei Xingfeng found that the restriction was broken, which meant that someone had been here. He searched a little and turned to leave. This place wasn't worth wasting time. Lei Xingfeng knew that there were countless islands here. If this wasn't enough, the next one might have a treasure that he urgently needed. Therefore, he didn't want to waste any time. After stepping on a few continents, Lei Xingfeng didn't find anything. All the restrictions were touched. One of them had almost all the restrictions destroyed. Lei Xingfeng just took a look and left. He didn't even need to explore. He knew that there wouldn't be anything inside. There was nothing to regret. There were too many opportunities in the fantasy sky realm. Along the way, Lei Xingfeng didn't insist on going to a certain place. He entered and left at will, going deeper and deeper into the fantasy sky realm. Plundering and moving forward, Lei Xingfeng was like a fish in water because he wasn't afraid of restrictions. There were quite a lot of treasures. Lei Xingfeng also obtained a lot of treasures that he urgently needed. He even let Lei Yin absorb some of the treasures. While plundering, Lei Yin also became stronger. Chapter 753. When Lei Xingfeng arrived at New Island and looked into the distance, he suddenly discovered a huge island. Perhaps this could be called a continent. The most peculiar thing was that the shape of this continent was extremely strange. It wasn't a flat island, but a three-dimensional, irregular shape. It looked extremely strange. Lei Xingfeng immediately became excited. This meant that the core area was just ahead. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng had already lost interest in the surrounding islands. He now wanted to find a way to enter the huge continent. After so many transmissions, Lei Xingfeng could roughly grasp the direction of the transmissions, so he was confident that he could enter this huge continent. As soon as he entered the continent, Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but curse. The place he was transported to was very deceptive. It was a huge pit with a diameter of 50 meters. The most peculiar thing was that the pit was straight up. It wasn't too deep, about 100 meters, and he could see the circular exit at the top. Lei Xingfeng felt that he had fallen into a well. Of course, this well was a bit big, and there was no water or treasure in it. The most hateful thing was that this cliff, which wasn't very high, had actually produced a restriction. This restriction was completely sealing. As long as you went up, you would trigger the restriction. It was very much like a trap. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. This was 2F** King Wicked. A natural trap? This was even more terrifying than a man-made trap. He really couldn't imagine that this was a natural trap. Although this huge continent gave Lei Xingfeng a show of strength, Lei Xingfeng was a restriction grandmaster. He might not be able to withstand other methods or attacks, but restrictions couldn't restrict him. Lei Xingfeng's eyes flickered with silver light. After a moment, he completely understood this restriction. After all, he could see the restriction nodes. This was quite a sinister trap. According to Lei Xingfeng's estimation, in addition to the restrictions on the inside of the cliff, the restrictions on the outside might not be easy to deal with. If an ordinary cultivator entered this place and didn't know anything about restrictions, it was very easy for them to make a choice. That was to release their true body and directly climb out of the huge pit. Then, they would be attacked by countless restrictions. This would depend on their luck. If the restrictions weren't strong, then they would be able to get out smoothly. If the restrictions were strong, then they would be beaten back to their original form. Lei Xingfeng did not need to release his real body. He had already found the way out. It was a winding path, but it was so obvious that he would not let it go. He flew up along the cliff and circled back and forth. If there were people around, they would be very curious about his actions. Of course, if there were people around, They wouldn't be able to see the restriction nodes either. After spending a few minutes, Lei Xingfeng stood on the cliff and looked around. Only then did he realize how many pits there were. They were densely packed with numerous large pits, and each one of them was dark and frightening. In other words, if one touched the restrictions, even if one didn't fall into the original pit, there were countless pits waiting for them. The restrictions would naturally force one to fall into them. After careful observation, Lei Xingfeng discovered that many of the restrictions in the pits had been completely destroyed. About 60% of the restrictions were still functioning normally. In other words, many cultivators, outsiders, and star beasts had fallen into this place. Most of them should have escaped. Lei Xingfeng analyzed for a moment and knew that he could use this loophole to walk and connect these broken restrictions. Lei Xingfeng calculated for a moment. He only needed to walk through a few restrictions, and then he would be able to run. Lei Xingfeng's only hope was that no one would teleport over at this time. If that happened, once the restrictions were touched, he would also be implicated. Without any hesitation, Lei Xingfeng walked out quickly. This area was huge. This was not an illusion brought about by the restrictions, but real land. It was completely different from the original island. Just this pit alone covered an area of several hundred square kilometers. He couldn't see the end of it at a glance. If this path was taken by someone who didn't know about restrictions, they would definitely feel like dying. There was a large pit every 100 meters. It was simply a world of pits. Even if there were treasures here, Lei Xingfeng didn't want them. Just looking at the pits made him feel uncomfortable. Fortunately, many restrictions had been broken. This allowed Lei Xingfeng to take advantage of it. Others might not know whether there were restrictions or not, but he could see them at a glance. Therefore, this journey was very relaxing and pleasant. Lei Xingfeng chose this path. Only a few pits had restrictions. As long as he was careful, there was no problem at all. After walking for 2 days, he finally reached the edge of the large pit area. His tense nerves finally relaxed. Lei Xingfeng wasn't afraid of this part of the road, but he was afraid that someone would enter and touch the restrictions, which would implicate him. Fortunately, the journey was safe. Lei Xingfeng's face just revealed a trace of a smile when the restrictions behind him exploded. He was so scared that he frantically fled. Before the restrictions could implicate him, he had already escaped. Standing at the edge of the large pit area, Lei Xingfeng had a lingering fear. He wasn't afraid of being attacked by the restrictions, but it would be very troublesome if he was caught in them. For example, if he was already standing at the edge of the restrictions and was about to walk out, the restrictions would explode at this time. If he was caught in the crossfire, he might be teleported to the center of the pit area. Lei Xingfeng patted his chest and said, "Damn, I was almost trapped. Haha, I wonder who this idiot is," he said with a hint of schadenfreude. The restrictions in the entire pit area exploded. Lei Xingfeng discovered that this restriction was really powerful. It would be very difficult for a slightly weaker cultivator to break free. At this moment, Lei Xingfeng saw that person, because that person revealed his true body. His true body was over 100 meters tall. Even in the explosion of the restrictions, it was incomparably clear. Xingfeng. It was actually Xingfeng. Lei Xingfeng didn't know if he should run or go save him. He never expected to meet Xingfeng here. Xingfeng roared and forced his way forward. Who knew that after a few steps, he would fall into a pit and then climb out? The worst thing was that he couldn't see under his feet. It looked like flat ground, but when he took a step, he might step on empty air. This caused him to feel his way forward bit by bit. As more and more restriction nodes were touched, the entire restriction array was activated. The entire restriction array's attack landed on Xingfeng's body. Lei Xingfeng was shocked to discover that Xingfeng's strength had greatly increased again. When Xingfeng fell into 2 pits in a row, he knew that things weren't good. This place was too difficult to walk, but he had to walk. This made him very anxious. He wanted to completely break the restriction, but he knew that it was impossible. After wandering here for a few years, he knew that if he could avoid being entangled with the restrictions, it would be best if he didn't have to. The gains definitely didn't make up for the losses. Therefore, he chose a direction and desperately moved forward. Lei Xingfeng observed for a moment and immediately knew that the restrictions in the pit area couldn't stop Xingfeng. Xingfeng would break out sooner or later. This guy's strength was really too strong. After thinking for a moment, Lei Xingfeng decided not to enter the restriction. Instead, he decided to wait at the place where Xingfeng was going. This place was too unfamiliar. Lei Xingfeng wasn't afraid of restrictions, but he was a little afraid of things he didn't know about. He was very clear that there were definitely more dangers here than just restrictions. It was just that he hadn't encountered them yet. If Xingfeng could bring him along, the two of them could work together and complement each other. Most importantly, Lei Xingfeng now had the mirror realm in his hands. If there was a conflict with Xingfeng, he could leave at any time. He wouldn't be restricted. Moreover, Lei Xingfeng didn't intend to be Xingfeng's vassal. They had to be on equal footing. Therefore, he needed to negotiate with Xingfeng. No matter what, Lei Xingfeng now had the strength of a middle-class monarch. Although he was much weaker than Xingfeng, it wasn't like he didn't have the ability to fight back. Moreover, he was in a place with restrictions everywhere. He didn't have to be afraid of Xingfeng. He could make use of the restrictions. After seeing the direction Xingfeng was going, Lei Xingfeng ran along the edge of the pit area. Xingfeng was working hard to move forward in the restrictions. His understanding of restrictions was much worse than Lei Xingfeng's. However, there was one thing he was clear about. He had to keep walking and couldn't deviate from the direction. There was a trick to this. He had to follow the position of his own secret door to determine the direction. Only then would he not be confused by the restrictions. This trick was taught to him by Lei Xingfeng. Relying on this trick, he broke through many restrictions. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng watched from the outside. He realized that Xingfeng was indeed very powerful. No matter how the restrictions confused him, he still walked in a straight line. However, he fell into many pits along the way. Lei Xingfeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He also knew that Xingfeng couldn't see under his feet and didn't know the real situation. He didn't know how many pits he fell into along the way. It was fine if it was a small pit. At most, he would stagger a few steps. However, he couldn't do anything about big pits. Even if he had a huge, true body, he would still fall into the pit. Then, he would have to use all his strength to climb out. He also had to resist the continuous attacks of the restrictions. It was truly unbearable. Lei Xingfeng saw clearly from afar and couldn't help but laugh. The once mighty Xingfeng could only stumble and crawl forward. From time to time, he would roar a few times to vent his frustrations. Suddenly, Xingfeng heard someone shout, "Take a step to the left." Although Xingfeng heard it, he didn't intend to listen. He still took a step forward. This step missed, and he fell into the pit. Then, Xingfeng heard a laugh. He angrily crawled out. Unfortunately, the restrictions were blocking his eyes. He couldn't see where Lei Xingfeng was and couldn't tell who was laughing. Take a step to the right. Xingfeng was flustered and exasperated. Who? Who is talking? He didn't listen and continued to move forward. However, this time, he hesitated slightly and didn't land directly. Instead, he tested the ground. However, this place was covered by restrictions. It was impossible to test the ground with his feet. He would feel that he was stepping on solid ground. However, when his body weight, or more accurately, his true body weight, pressed down, Xingfeng stepped into the air again. This time, it was truly a huge hole, an extremely huge one. Xingfeng fell into it and almost shattered his true body. This hole was over 1,000 meters deep, and the diameter of the hole was 350 to 60 meters. Therefore, Xingfeng fell in one piece. Then, Xingfeng heard another laugh. Chapter 754. Xingfeng watched as Xingfeng fell. He couldn't do anything about it, but seeing Xingfeng fall, he couldn't help but want to laugh, and he really did. Even though Xingfeng fell, he could still hear it clearly, causing him to jump in anger. He had no choice but to jump. Now he understood that the other party didn't have any bad intentions. The other party was just reminding him not to step into the pit. Xingfeng climbed up slowly. He stood at the edge of the pit and shouted, "Who is it? Who is it?" Another chuckle came clearly. Then he heard, "It's me, a foam." Xingfeng smiled. All his anger disappeared. He knew that Lei Xingfeng was proficient in restrictions. Although he didn't know how Lei Xingfeng came in, it was enough that he met Lei Xingfeng and could give him some pointers. Good boy. You didn't tell me clearly. You made me fall twice. Lei Xingfeng laughed. You didn't listen. Okay, when you come out, walk 3 steps to the left. Xingfeng followed his instructions and walked 3 steps. Then he heard 7 steps forward. The steps of the real body were huge. Each step was at least 10 meters. 7 steps was more than 100 meters. Okay, 5 steps to the right. 3 steps forward, 2 steps to the left. Under Lei Xingfeng's guidance, Xingfeng didn't fall into the pit again. He walked out step by step. Of course, the restrictions were still attacking him. However, with Xingfeng's strength, he didn't care too much. Even if his real body was damaged, it would be repaired quickly. Lei Xingfeng said, Okay, you can withdraw your real body now. Xingfeng withdrew his real body. In an instant, the restrictions' attacks fell on his real body. Xingfeng shouted, How can I go? A big hand suddenly reached into the restriction and pulled Xingfeng out. In fact, Xingfeng was already at the edge of the restriction. In order not to trigger the restriction's transfer function, Lei Xingfeng released his real body outside and directly pulled Xingfeng out with his hand. After putting down Xingfeng, Lei Xingfeng withdrew his true body. Since Xingfeng knew that it was Lei Xingfeng who had caught him, Xingfeng did not resist or attack. When he landed, he turned around to take a look. The entire restriction was still going berserk. Lei Xingfeng giggled and said, Senior, what a coincidence. Xingfeng laughed as he scolded, You bastard brat. Are you trying to make a fool out of me? Lei Xingfeng said, You're the one who didn't want to listen. I didn't give you the wrong advice. Xingfeng muttered, Who knew it was you? Why didn't you sign up earlier? You made me so suspicious. Lei Xingfeng said, You don't listen to good advice. Suffering is right in front of you. Ha! Now you know what it's like. Xingfeng couldn't help but laugh and said, Who knows if he's a good guy or a bad guy? In this place, there are more bad guys than good guys. We have to be careful. Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, Are there a lot of people here? Xingfeng said, Not only are there a lot of people, but there are also a lot of foreign races and star beasts. It's just that this place is too big, and it's shrouded in restrictions. You can't see other people. However, if you're lucky, well, I can't say that you're lucky. If you're unlucky, you might encounter an enemy, or even 2. Lei Xingfeng said, I can't say that I'm an enemy. I did encounter a star beast. Hee. Xingfeng said, A star beast that can enter this place is not simple. How did you escape? Lei Xingfeng rolled his eyes and said, What do you mean? Do I have to escape when I see a star beast? Xingfeng looked him up and down and said, Not bad. Your strength has increased a lot. However, if you were to fight a star beast, you would at most be able to fight to a draw. Oh, maybe you don't have to escape. Don't tell me you're going to kill it? Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, I might not be able to kill it, but with restrictions, I can definitely kill it. Xingfeng was shocked. Really? Did you kill it? He asked. Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, Yes, I killed it. Xingfeng hurriedly asked, What element was it? Lei Xingfeng said, It was of the earth element. Xingfeng was even more surprised. He said, Wow, the defense of the earth element is very strong. Amazing. He couldn't help but praise Xingfeng. One must know that earth and metal element star beasts were the most difficult to deal with. Not to mention their strong vitality, the key was their super strong defense. Even he didn't have much confidence in killing such a star beast. It wasn't that he wasn't strong enough, but that star beasts knew how to escape. If a star beast with super strong defense tried to escape, there was nothing he could do. Lei Xingfeng said, That star beast was trapped in a big restriction. It was a very strong fire restriction, so I killed it. Xingfeng admired Lei Xingfeng's mastery of restrictions. He knew that many cultivators couldn't compare with him. The reason why he was willing to take him with him was because Lei Xingfeng's restrictions were very strong. As for the fantasy sky realm, it was almost a combination of restrictions. There were restrictions everywhere. Those who didn't understand restrictions would suffer greatly when they entered this place. The most terrible thing was that some treasures couldn't be obtained in the end if they touched the restrictions. This kind of change made the experts who entered this place extremely miserable. Xing Feng said, "Even so, it's still a very amazing thing. To be able to use restrictions and kill a star beast was indeed an amazing thing. Moreover, this restriction wasn't set up by Lei Xingfeng. The fact that he could use it proved that Lei Xingfeng had good control over restrictions. This kind of control over restrictions was a great help to Xing Feng." After meeting Lei Xingfeng, Xing Feng knew that he could get more treasures in this fantasy sky realm. Xing Feng said, "Let me recover." Lei Xingfeng said with a smile, "Okay, I'll keep watch." They had this kind of tacit understanding. Lei Xingfeng went to the side to keep watch. Xing Feng took out all kinds of materials and large pieces of energy crystals. He began to let his seal devour, repair, and replenish his seal. The battle just now didn't consume too much energy, but he had to maintain his best state to deal with the crisis that would come later. He couldn't be careless here. After waiting for less than half an hour, Xing Feng put away his seal and said, "Let's go. I'll take you to a place." In addition to the pits, there was a large open space. Occasionally, a small restriction would appear, but it didn't affect Xing Feng and Lei Xingfeng. Xing Feng had no problem breaking through it with his strength. However, with Lei Xingfeng here, he would naturally guide Xing Feng to make a detour. There was no need to consume any energy at all. This was the advantage of Lei Xingfeng. Xing Feng couldn't know about these restrictions, but Lei Xingfeng only needed to take a look to know which places had restrictions and which didn't. Under Lei Xingfeng's guidance, the two moved forward quickly. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Where are we going?" "Senior, are you familiar with this place?" Xing Feng said, "No, but there is a rule here. Follow the flow of the water, and you will find something good." Lei Xingfeng was stunned. He said, "I've never seen water." Xing Feng said, "Observe carefully, and you will know." Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but stop. He said, "Wait for me." He looked down. Indeed, there was a small stream hidden in the weeds. If one didn't pay attention, they wouldn't be able to see it. The two started walking again. Lei Xingfeng said, "There is indeed water." Xing Feng said, "Most of them are like this. Follow the flow of the water, and you will find something." After a while, Lei Xingfeng suddenly said, "Stop. There is a large restriction in front." Xing Feng immediately stopped and asked doubtfully, "There is a large restriction?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Yes, follow me. Let's see what is inside the restriction first." Xing Feng was even more doubtful. He said, "What is inside the restriction?" Lei Xingfeng was stunned. He said, "What do you mean?" Xing Feng was even more confused. He said, "What do you think is inside the restriction?" "I'm curious. What is inside the restriction?" Lei Xingfeng said in surprise, "You don't know? You don't know that there are treasures inside the restriction?" Xing Feng said, "I really don't know. I've heard people say that they can occasionally find some treasures in the restrictive spells. However, it's very difficult. You can only find them if you're lucky. Basically, it's impossible to find any treasures in the restrictive spells." Lei Xingfeng said, "That is because the restriction is activated. Once it is activated, most of the treasures inside the restriction will be consumed." This time, it was Xing Feng's turn to be stunned. He said, "Are you serious?" Along the way, I don't know how many forbidden areas I have broken through. How many treasures have I destroyed?" Suddenly, he felt a heartache. Xing Feng said, "If I move fast enough, will I be able to get some benefits?" Lei Xingfeng shook his head and said, "Once the restriction is activated, there is basically no hope. Of course, if you sincerely want to break the restriction and destroy the entire formation, you might be able to get some treasures. If you just break through by force, then you basically won't get anything." Xing Feng said, "Oh, I see. You're on the outer island, right? This is the real fantasy sky realm, but it's a bit different." "Well, I can't be sure now. Maybe there really are treasures in the restrictions." Lei Xingfeng now knew that the outer island was different from this place. Xing Feng suddenly reacted and said, You entered from the outer island?" Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Yes." Xing Feng sighed and said, "You are really lucky. As long as you are on the outer island, it will be extremely difficult to get out. There are too many people who are lost in the outer island. It is said that as long as you are on the outer island, there will be endless continents. Moreover, there are unlimited restrictions on each continent. Lei Xingfeng thought about it and immediately understood what was going on. He could see through the restrictions, so he wouldn't be confused. He could even choose the way to leave. Others couldn't see the situation outside, so they would be like headless flies running around. If they wanted to get out, they would have to rely on luck. Otherwise, how could they get out? I came from the outer island. This is not luck. I am confident that I can get out. Chapter 755. Xingfeng looked at Lei Xingfeng in shock and said, "There are so many treasures in the outer island." Lei Xingfeng said, "Not many, but I got here quickly." Xingfeng said, "How did you get in?" Lei Xingfeng asked back, "Senior, how did you get in?" Xingfeng said, "I used 1,000 thorns to teleport in." Lei Xingfeng slapped his forehead and said, "All right, I forgot." Xingfeng shook his head and sighed. "You must have forced your way in from the outer island. Kid, you are powerful enough. Not many people dare to do that, unless they are ignorant." After hearing some news, they thought they could come in, but they all died in the outer island. "Humph! How dare you come to the fantasy sky realm with such little knowledge?" Lei Xingfeng was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. He also knew little about this place. When he heard that he could come in, he followed. Luckily, he had a deep understanding of seals and a pair of special eyes. Thinking about it, there were so many islands outside with countless seals. If one could not identify the direction, they could only rely on luck to come out. Of course, Lei Xingfeng had gained a lot of benefits in the outer island. He thought that there would be more here, but there was nothing in the seals. He asked, "What treasures are here? Where do they usually appear?" Xingfeng said, "In the seal area." Lei Xingfeng was confused. "Or in the seal area?" Xingfeng said, "No, it's in an area surrounded by restrictive spells. You have to force your way through in order to get it. It's very difficult. Normally, it's a large-scale or super large-scale restrictive spell. Without a certain level of strength, it's very difficult to force your way through. Moreover, the worst part is that you've been in there for a long time, but you've come out from somewhere else." Lei Xingfeng knew that one would get lost in the seal area. If one got lost, they would not be able to find anything. Xingfeng smiled and said, "However, I am different. Although I do not know much about seals, I learned a trick you taught me, which benefited me a lot." Lei Xingfeng said, "Using the secret door to locate the location?" Xingfeng said, That's right. With this, I won't lose my way." Lei Xingfeng smiled bitterly. "That's the stupidest way." Xingfeng said, "It doesn't matter whether he is stupid or not. As long as he can be used effectively, it is a good idea." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "What about the restriction formation ahead?" Xingfeng said, "Let's go. What else is there to do?" Lei Xingfeng said, "I'm confident that I can pass through without disturbing the restrictions, but it's hard to say for you. What should I do?" Xingfeng said, "Can't you bring me along?" Lei Xingfeng said, "It depends on what kind of restriction it is. Some restrictions are easy to bring over, while others are difficult. You might trigger the restriction if you're not careful." Xingfeng said, "It's fine. Just take me with you. Once I trigger the restriction, I'll be responsible for your safety and bring you through it." Lei Xingfeng said, "That's good. We'll each take care of it. I'll leave the most difficult part to you." The two quickly reached an agreement. Lei Xingfeng said, "Let's make one thing clear first. We'll divide the treasures we get equally. If you need treasures urgently, I'll give them to you." Xingfeng looked at him deeply and said, "Very well. You're qualified to say that. If it's something I need, you'll give it to me. Similarly, if it's something you need, I'll give it to you. As for those low-grade treasures that I don't need, I'll give them to you." He was very generous. He knew that with Lei Xingfeng around, he would be like a fish in water in the fantasy sky realm. It was much better than running around alone. It was a simple declaration to divide the spoils. No, it was a declaration to divide the spoils. Both of them were satisfied. No matter what, Lei Xingfeng was weaker than Xingfeng. With him around, even if they didn't get much protection, at least he would be prepared to enter and understand the fantasy sky realm well. Xingfeng didn't lose out. With Lei Xingfeng, a grandmaster proficient in restrictions, he could save a lot of danger and energy. This was the benefit of cooperation. Lei Xingfeng said, "All right, senior, follow me. Once I tell you to get close, you have to get as close as possible. In addition, you have to follow my movements. This way, you can avoid triggering the restriction as much as possible." They had cooperated before, so Xingfeng knew how to follow. He said, "Don't worry, I'll follow you closely." The two of them entered the restriction formation one after the other. This restriction formation was also natural. Lei Xingfeng was already numb to it. Whether it was natural or man-made, it was the same to him. He just needed to find treasures and learn. He didn't have any other requirements. This restriction formation covered a very large area. It was different from the restrictions on the outer island. It was at least 10 times larger. It would take a lot of time and energy to go deep into the central area. After making many turns, Lei Xingfeng soon found a blank spot. He said, "Let's take a rest here." He didn't dare to be careless after using his eyes for so long. He had to take a rest before his eyes started to tear up. As expected, there were no traces of treasures in this blank spot. In other words, the restriction formation here was very different from the one on the outer island. Lei Xingfeng was relaxed here, but Xingfeng felt completely different. He had been struggling in the restriction formation since he entered. Whenever he saw the restriction formation, he would have a headache. Restrictions were different from enemies. Even if Xingfeng was very powerful, he would have a headache when faced with an emotionless, painless, and endless attack. It would be best if he didn't have to fight. Lei Xingfeng was able to find a place to rest. Xingfeng couldn't help but praise, "Amazing." Lei Xingfeng didn't say anything. He just sat down and closed his eyes to rest. Xingfeng also sat down and said, "By the way, Feng, is there anything to eat? I'm running out of food." Lei Xingfeng closed his eyes and waved his hand. Baskets of food appeared on the ground. He said, "Let's make do with it first." Xingfeng was overjoyed. He had been here for a long time, and the food he had prepared was running out. He was worried about where to find enough food. There were no living animals in the fantasy sky realm, unless he met a star beast. But so far, he hadn't seen a star beast. It was too difficult to meet an outsider or a star beast here. Even if he found someone breaking through the restriction formation, he might not be able to rush over. There were layers of restrictions here, and it was very difficult to get close to a person. Xingfeng sighed and said, "Finally, I can have a full meal." As he spoke, he started to eat. Lei Xingfeng said, "Is there enough water?" Xingfeng said, "There is water here. Food is hard to get here, but there is still a lot of water." Lei Xingfeng nodded silently and didn't say anything else. He was trying to recover from the fatigue in his eyes. After about 10 minutes, Lei Xingfeng stood up and said, "Let's continue." Xingfeng put away the food and said, "Okay, let's go." The restriction nodes of this great restriction formation were relatively sparse, which made it easy for Lei Xingfeng to avoid them. Lei Xingfeng chose the path to enter, carefully avoiding the restriction nodes and trying not to touch them. According to his idea, if he could avoid touching them, he would try not to trigger the restriction formation. From time to time, he would find an empty spot and take a rest. Once his eyes recovered, Lei Xingfeng would take Xingfeng and continue to move forward. This time, they were very lucky. It was a safe journey. They didn't encounter a large number of moving restriction nodes, which made Lei Xingfeng a little surprised. This restriction formation was quite big, but they didn't encounter any trouble. Xingfeng was full of praise. He didn't expect that such a big restriction formation would allow them to reach here. Because the restriction formation hadn't activated, even Xingfeng could see the front clearly. He knew that they were about to pass through the restriction formation. Finally, Lei Xingfeng stepped out and said, "We're out." Xingfeng followed him out of the restriction formation. He looked up and said, "This area is not small. We need to search. There should be many good things." Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "It's up to you. I'm not familiar with this place." Xingfeng said, "Okay, leave it to me." "Ha! If everyone is like this, I'll be rich." Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, "Senior, did you come in alone?" Xing Feng shook his head and said, "There are 3 of us. However, after entering the transmission formation, we split up. We haven't seen each other until now. This place is too big." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Yes, there's a kind of power here. It's hard to form a team." Xing Feng said, "Yes, I know. We originally planned to go together. That way, we would have more power. Unfortunately, we split up. We tried a few methods to gather together, but in the end, we still failed." The 2 of them didn't walk far before Lei Xingfeng said in surprise, "Terraced fields?" Xing Feng said, "What's a terraced field?" Lei Xingfeng pointed ahead and said, "That's it." In front of them were layers of flat terraced fields. When the wind blew, they could even see the ripples on the water surface. This terraced field had water gushing out from the center and flowing in all directions. There were layers of water on all sides, and there was a naturally formed dam. It was about 100 meters tall, and the shape of the terraced field was like a pyramid. In Lei Xingfeng's eyes, the colorful scene was like a treasure shining in all directions. Xing Feng rushed to the side and squatted down. He reached his hand into the water and smiled. "Haha, this is what I wanted. I finally got something." Lei Xingfeng came to his side and squatted down. He asked, "What is this?" Xing Feng laughed. After a while, he said, "Good, good. Ha, my luck is really good." Lei Xingfeng looked at Xing Feng, who seemed to have forgotten himself, and said, "What treasure is this? Is it this water?" Xing Feng said proudly, "Yes, it is this water. Do you see it? It's rainbow." Lei Xingfeng didn't understand. "What's rainbow?" Xing Feng said, "I can't explain it. Release your own Lei Yin and Lei Xingfeng will know." "No, wait. We'll release our seals together." Chapter 756. Lei Xingfeng released his Lei Yin, and Xing Feng released his seal at the same time. In an instant, the 2 seals became excited, and Lei Xingfeng could clearly feel it. The so-called rainbow water was required by almost all seals. It was used to improve the quality of the seal. After being baptized by the rainbow water, the quality of the seal would increase by a level. This was an amazing thing. Xing Feng directed his seal to absorb the rainbow water and sighed. "This thing is extremely rare. I've only heard of it, but I've never seen it before. Ha! I finally got something that I'm satisfied with. I haven't seen many good things in all these years." He was different from Lei Xingfeng. He didn't understand restrictions, and as a result, he often couldn't get good things. This was the first time he cooperated with Lei Xingfeng in the fantasy sky realm, and it was so successful. Xing Feng was full of expectations. After a while, Lei Xingfeng's Lei Yin stopped absorbing, but Xing Feng didn't. His seal's quality might not be higher than Lei Xingfeng's, but his seal's grade was too high, and it consumed more rainbow water. Even if the 2 of them were to wash their seals, they would only consume 1/10 of the rainbow water. There was still a lot left. The 2 of them took out bottles and jars, and Lei Xingfeng even took out a specially refined large bottle and began to collect the rainbow water. Soon, they collected all the rainbow water. However, the water at the top was still flowing out little by little. It wouldn't be long before this place was filled with the rainbow water again. What a good place. Xing Feng sighed and said, "It's a pity. If this place could be defended, I could use this rainbow water to exchange for many things." Lei Xingfeng's heart was moved. He could leave the coordinates. Even if he couldn't come, it would be a good thing to let the people from the secret sect come and collect it. After secretly leaving the coordinates, Lei Xingfeng said, "Yes, it's a pity." He secretly laughed. This was definitely a good idea. In the future, if anyone wanted to wash their seals, they could just come here. After washing the seals, Lei Xingfeng felt that Lei Yin was full of vitality. This kind of opportunity was really hard to come by. Xing Feng said, "I'll take you to the place where humans trade. There are many good things there. We just happen to get the rainbow water. We should be able to exchange it for something I urgently need." Lei Xingfeng was surprised. "There's a place to trade?" Xing Feng said, "What's so strange about it? Where there are people, there are trades." Lei said, "How do we go there?" Xing Feng said, "It's very easy. Anyone who enters through the 1,000 thorns will have a set of coordinates. They could just use their own secret door to go over. Said, it's that simple? It's that simple? Said, how hard do you think it is? Only now did Xian Feng know that this was a tacit rule. He just didn't know about it. Xing Feng said, how can there be a lot of people? If you're lucky, you might meet a dozen people. If you're unlucky, you might not even meet a single person. Only few people can come in. Lei Xingfeng said, that's too few. Xing Feng said, it's not bad. Even if 1,000 people come in, how many will come a trade? Very, very little. Lei Xingfeng said in shock, 1,000. Xing Feng said, I don't know the exact number. It might not be 1,000, but it should be a few hundred. Lei Xingfeng said, after a little calculation. It was indeed so. When there were many people, there would only be a dozen, but not more than 30. According to Xing Feng, as long as there were people, it would be fine. Those who could come here were all experts. After staying here for a long time, they would definitely gain something. Most of the gains might not be what they needed. This gave rise to the possibility of trading. As time passed, a trading point was gradually formed. Everyone agreed on the location. As long as they could use their secret sect, they would come here to trade. Lei Xingfeng said, okay, let's go and have a look. Maybe we can find something we need. Xing Feng said, there's a big chance. Everyone's gains are mostly things they don't need. It depends on your luck. If the other party has the materials you need, it can save you a lot of time and energy. As he said this, he opened his secret sect and brought Lei Xingfeng set out. This was a place surrounded by restrictions. The area was quite large, more than 1,000 square kilometers. They were in the center, on a hill. There were many wooden sheds built. The reason why they built wooden sheds instead of houses was because it rained here all year round. When Lei Xingfeng said entered, the thing that made him feel the most comfortable was the rolling thunder and the flashing lightning in the sky from time to time. Xing Feng glanced at Lei Xingfeng said with a smile, I forgot. It rains here all year round, accompanied by thunder and lightning. It's very suitable for you. He knew that Lei Xingfeng was of the thunder attribute. There were many tables and chairs in the wooden sheds. They were all left behind by other people. Wooden sheds of various sizes were scattered on the hill. The torrential rain poured down continuously. The rain was very heavy. Even though Lei Xingfeng said had traveled extensively, he rarely saw such heavy rain. It was a real downpour. Fortunately, the wooden sheds were built on the hill. Otherwise, this place would be flooded in minutes. The water below the hill had already spread out. This place looked more like a small island. Lei Xingfeng said. He noticed that there were a few people in the wooden sheds. They should be sitting. Xing Feng brought Lei Xingfeng said to one of the wooden sheds. He found 2 clean chairs and a table before sitting down. Lei Xingfeng said in a low voice, should we start looking for people to trade? Xing Feng said, there's no rush. Let's sit and wait first. Lei Xingfeng said nodded. Then he sat down and said, all right, I'll listen to you. As the two sat down, Xing Feng said in a low voice, if we rush to trade, we will be in a passive position. We should wait for others to lose patience and come over. This way, it will be easier for us to gain an advantage. Lei Xingfeng said with a smile, yes, I understand. What if no one moves? Xing Feng said they won't. Some people have already waited for a long time. They can only come to trade. We just arrived, so we could take a break. Lei Xingfeng said, I see. All right, I'll cultivate for a while. Xing Feng said, do as you wish. I will stand guard at the side. Lei Xingfeng said. He sat cross-legged on the chair and started cultivating. However, Lei Xingfeng said forgot that he was a thunder attribute cultivator. If he cultivated in a thunderstorm, he would become a huge lightning conductor. Instantly, a flash of light fell from the sky and exploded on the wooden sheds. It should be known that the sound of thunder was very frightening. The sound was earth-shattering. Even with Xing Feng said's extraordinary cultivation, he was still frightened by the sound of thunder. Then, lightning struck down one after another. Boom, boom, boom. With a cracking sound, the roof of the wooden sheds was shattered by the lightning. The lightning struck Lei Xingfeng said directly. Xing Feng said had no choice but to retreat to another wooden shed. After all, there were many wooden sheds here. The others who were originally sitting also stood up. There was no other way. Lei Xingfeng said's movements were too big, especially when the lightning struck him like crazy. His whole body was like a huge light bulb, emitting a dazzling halo. Lei Xingfeng said felt very good. He had never felt so good before. The difference between the lightning of the magnetic storm mountain range and natural lightning was huge. Lei Xingfeng said's whole body was comfortable. Every lightning strike gave him a warm and numb feeling. His whole body was cleansed by the lightning. After cultivating for half a day, Lei Xingfeng said let out Lei Yin. In an instant, the lightning was attracted to Lei Yin. Bolts of lightning struck Lei Yin. A large amount of lightning energy was absorbed by Lei Yin. This kind of energy was slightly different from the energy of crystals. It was purer and more suitable. At the same time, Lei Xingfeng said threw up many large energy crystals for Lei Yin to swallow. Because Lei Yin had just been cleansed by the rainbow-colored water, the quality of the energy had become very good. The energy that could not be absorbed before could now be absorbed in large amounts. This was an excellent opportunity to strengthen Lei Yin. The people present were all experts. Of course, they knew the effect of Lei Xingfeng said's cultivation. It was unbelievably good. Some people sighed. He had found a good place to cultivate. His strength was quite good. Xingfeng paid attention to the surroundings. Fortunately, no one came to disturb Lei Xingfeng. If they interrupted his cultivation, this guy would definitely kill someone. He could also see that Lei Xingfeng had reached a critical moment. In fact, he did not know that Lei Xingfeng himself was also ignorant. After the rainbow-colored water cleansed Lei Yin, it actually gave Lei Xingfeng the possibility of advancing. In addition, the abundant lightning energy here allowed Lei Xingfeng to take advantage of this opportunity to make a breakthrough. Of course, this breakthrough could not be interrupted. Once it was interrupted, it would be very difficult to have this opportunity in the future. At this point, Lei Xingfeng also reacted. He secretly complained in his heart, but he could not stop cultivating. He could only place his hopes on Xingfeng. As long as Xingfeng could protect him, then he might be able to advance. The violent lightning continued to fall, getting more and more frequent, and also more and more. The attraction of the lightning stamp was simply terrifying to the extreme. Even if there was no lightning, because of the existence of the lightning stamp, it would produce lightning. One person took a few steps forward. He was immediately discovered by Xingfeng. Xingfeng dodged and blocked the path. He said, "Friend, stop." That person glanced at Xingfeng and realized that this guy was not to be trifled with. He asked, "Your companion?" Xingfeng said, "Yes." That person sighed and took a few steps back. He did not move forward. Some others also followed suit. Everyone understood that if someone was guarding, it would be a provocation if they continued to move forward. It would really cause a fight. Lei Xingfeng was actually feeling uneasy. He did not know what other materials Lei Yin needed, but at present, he could still hold on. He estimated that even if he succeeded in advancing, he would need a large amount of materials to replenish it. Xingfeng actually knew about this problem, but he could not help now. He could only watch. Fortunately, Lei Xingfeng had accumulated quite a lot in the past. He could still hold on for now. Chapter 757. Last time, Lei Xingfeng was also like this. He did not prepare anything, but of course, he did not have any psychological pressure. With Xingfeng's help, he quickly advanced. This time, he was lucky that he had a hobby of collecting things. After entering the fantasy sky realm, he had been collecting things diligently and obtained many treasures. For the time being, Lei Xingfeng was still persevering. He took out a large number of materials, and whether they were useful or not, he tested them. The surrounding people looked at him with sidelong glances. This guy was quite rich. In terms of energy, other than large energy crystals, Lei Xingfeng also took out a stalagmite. With a light tap, a super-quality crystal appeared and was absorbed by Lei Yin. When the stalagmite was taken out, many people's eyes began to shine. Lei Xingfeng had underestimated its value. 4 high-level cultivators. This was a treasure. Lei Xingfeng had many stalagmites in his hands. In one breath, he threw out 30 stalagmites. Even Xingfeng was envious. This thing was extremely helpful for the advancement of seals. Moreover, he knew that with a treasure like this stalagmite, Lei Xingfeng would have no problem advancing. After advancing, all he had to do was to replenish some materials. High-level monarch rank. Lei Xingfeng's strength level in the fantasy sky realm was not bad. Moreover, he was also a restriction great grandmaster expert. With the combination of the two, he was stronger than most people. The surrounding people only saw this and did not dare to provoke Lei Xingfeng. With Xingfeng's protection, everyone could only watch as Lei Xingfeng advanced. This was also a good opportunity to observe. Lei Xingfeng always felt that it was not enough. Therefore, he was a little flustered. He took out everything he had to test, including various strange flames. He did not expect that Lei Yin would also absorb some strange flames. Lei Yin did not care about some strange flames, but when he released some, he quickly swallowed them. Even Lei Xingfeng did not expect this. Lei Xingfeng took out some treasures and put them away. This attracted the attention of some people. Many people were ecstatic because they saw treasures that they needed and Lei Xingfeng did not use. This meant that there was a possibility of trading. Moreover, Lei Xingfeng was obviously lacking in materials, especially precious thunder-type materials. After all, Lei Xingfeng advanced too quickly. Even if he was a collection maniac, he could not get all the materials he needed. The most troublesome thing was that he could not trade for them. This was originally an excellent opportunity. He did not expect that Lei Xingfeng could not help but cultivate when he saw the thunderstorm. As a result, he advanced. This made him very embarrassed. Xingfeng also saw some problems. He immediately took out some thunder-type materials or other materials that Lei Xingfeng needed and threw them into Lei Yin's circle. They were quickly absorbed by Lei Yin. One of the guys shouted, "I have 2 thunder-type materials here. I want to exchange them for top-quality bamboo shoot crystals. If you agree, I will also throw them in." Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Okay." Suddenly, the man smiled happily. He took out 2 thunder-type materials and directly threw them into the circle. They were immediately swallowed by Lei Yin. The others also saw the opportunity. They were all envious of the bamboo shoot crystals. Each of them took out their treasures and began to trade. Moreover, they began to trade while Lei Xingfeng was advancing. This made Xingfeng and Lei Xingfeng a little dumbfounded. There was actually such a good thing. At this time, Lei Xingfeng did not care. As long as there were treasures to trade, he could strengthen his Lei Yin. Lei Yin was the foundation of cultivation. He was very clear about this. With the help of everyone, or rather, the trade, Lei Xingfeng soon stabilized his Lei Yin. With a large number of treasures, coupled with the fact that Lei Yin was being purified by the 7-colored water, the whole Lei Yin began to rapidly change. It was obvious that it was beginning to become more powerful than before. When Lei Yin was suspended high in the sky, countless thunders were generated. The lightning in the sky was also strongly attracted to it. The surrounding people began to retreat, knowing that the critical moment had arrived. Xingfeng was relieved because the surrounding people had already thrown in their treasures. At this time, whoever caused trouble would become the public enemy. If Lei Xingfeng died, then the treasures that they had thrown in before would be wasted. If he died, then what was the point of exchanging them? Therefore, these people automatically came to protect Lei Xingfeng. They wanted to prevent him from getting into trouble as much as possible. Dense thunders fell down. Even if the surrounding people were experts among experts, they were still in awe of this shocking and violent thunder. Therefore, there were very few thunder-type cultivators, but as long as they grew up, every one of them would become an expert. The entire process lasted for 2 days. During these 2 days, the thunder and lightning did not stop. During this period, it was even raining heavily. This advancement was actually a small hurdle for Lei Xingfeng. He had actually casually crossed it. The main credit was still the 7-colored water. The bigger credit was the spiritual liquid that Lei Xingfeng secretly consumed. That was something that Lei Xingfeng often consumed. It was mainly used to adjust his body. The effect was surprisingly good, and it was also an extremely precious treasure. A few inadvertent actions allowed Lei Xingfeng to step into the high-level Sovereign King level. His strength had once again increased by leaps and bounds. After stabilizing for a few more days, the surrounding people were very patient. They continued to wait. Finally, Lei Xingfeng stood up and said, "Thank you everyone for your help. Everyone, come over. You could trade with me now." He knew very well that these cultivators had provided a lot of good stuff in advance. However, this was also risky. Many cultivators had died after advancing to the next level. Xing Feng came to his side and asked, "How is it?" Lei Xingfeng nodded and smiled. "Very good. I still need to replenish some materials. There are no problems with the structure. Some materials can be replenished in the future. The problem is not big." Xing Feng smiled and said, "Congratulations. I did not expect you to improve so quickly." One must know that when they first met, Lei Xingfeng's strength was really nothing special other than seals. However, with just a simple guidance, this guy's strength began to increase by leaps and bounds. The speed of advancement was beyond Xingfeng's understanding. The higher one's strength, the safer it would be. It was the same for all cultivators. They desperately pursued strength. This way, whether it was searching for materials or exploring the world, it was the best guarantee. Lei Xingfeng and Xing Feng came to a relatively wide wooden shed. Lei Xingfeng called out, "Friends who gave me materials and treasures, please come over." There were a total of 7 outsiders here. Including Lei Xingfeng and Xing Feng, there were 9 people. According to Xing Feng, this was already very good. There were usually 3 or 4 people here all year round, so having 7 people was already very good. The people who traded with Lei Xingfeng all wanted the bamboo shoot crystals, so Lei Xingfeng did not say much. Instead, he took out a pile of bamboo shoot crystals, about 30 of them, and said, "How much do you think your treasures are worth? Take them yourself." The people present were not low-level cultivators. Their perception and value of treasures were not much different. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng was so bold that others had to exchange according to their actual value. Lei Xingfeng did not want to waste his breath. Some people would take 1 or 2 more bamboo shoot crystals, and some people would take bamboo shoot crystals that were similar to the treasures he gave out. Everyone was smart, so Lei Xingfeng did not say much. After several people took the bamboo shoot crystals, he said, "Well, I have other treasures here. I want to exchange things. In addition to what you need, other good things can also be exchanged." An old man with a wrinkled face said, "In addition to bamboo shoot crystals, what good things do you have?" Xing Feng interjected, "7-colored water." Suddenly, everyone's eyes lit up. What a joke! The 7-color water could purify seals and improve the quality of seals. This kind of treasure was absolutely rare. They did not expect Xing Feng to have it. Lei Xingfeng said, "I also have it." Suddenly, there was an uproar. The eyes of all 7 people were shining. They stared at the 2 people. Unfortunately, they could not snatch it. If they could, no one would be able to resist. Lei Xingfeng added, "The quantity is limited. First come, first serve." The wrinkled old man said, "I have these things. Take a look and see if they can be exchanged." He looked at Lei Xingfeng with a little apprehension. He casually took out a pile of things. This guy, when Lei Xingfeng was advancing, he did not throw out anything. Only now did he take out a pile of things. There was no lack of high-quality thunder or tribute materials. Cunning old fox. The others were at a loss. Lei Xingfeng shook his head and said, "It is indeed a good treasure. However, those who gave me treasures first and let me advance smoothly can exchange in front." Suddenly, those who rushed to exchange treasures smiled. They had made the right choice. Searching for treasures was an awkward thing. You won't get what you want, but those that you don't want and those that don't match your attributes can be found in large piles. It was almost the same for everyone. Xine Feng was slightly better. It was mainly because he was proficient in restrictions that allowed him to obtain more things. His chances of obtaining things that were useful to him were also much higher. The exchange here was to put out all kinds of treasures. Lei Xingfeng had a dozen big bottles in front of him. He had someone check and confirm that it was rainbow water. The first person was the one who had thrown something to Lei Xingfeng. He was very upset because Lei Xingfeng had already thrown out the treasure that he urgently needed, but there were no suitable treasures on hand. Lei Xingfeng reminded him, other treasures are fine too. That person happily took out a pile of things. Lei Xingfeng asked again, Senior, what do you need? Xingfeng said, no problem. You exchange first. When he is done with you, he can exchange with me. Yes, these things are not enough to exchange for one session of rainbow water. One session of cleansing the seal required a lot of rainbow water. The higher the level, the more rainbow water was needed. Lei Xingfeng exchanged 2 bottles with the first person, which was not enough for one session of cleansing. However, he could still exchange with Xingfeng. Perhaps he could gather enough rainbow water for one session of cleansing. Everyone wanted to trade for enough 7-colored water to use once. At the very least, they could use it once to upgrade their seals by 1 grade. That way, it was very likely that they would be able to take another step forward. After the trade, in the end, only 2 people obtained enough 7-colored water to use once. The others were unable to gather enough treasures. One of them was the old man with a face full of wrinkles. Chapter 758. It wasn't that the old man didn't have any treasures, but when it was his turn, Xingfeng ran out of rainbow water. Although Lei Xingfeng still had some, it wasn't enough to exchange for one cleansing session of rainbow water. The old man was clearly unhappy, but he had nothing to exchange for it. Lei Xingfeng wasn't so generous as to give it away for free, but he didn't want to offend the old man. It was obvious that the old man's strength was quite strong, comparable to Xingfeng's. Therefore, he left a sentence, saying that if he got new treasures, he could continue the exchange, provided they met again. This appeased the old man. The old man said, that's fine, but if I find what you need, you have to have rainbow water. Otherwise, I'll be in trouble. Xingfeng said, what we need isn't easy to find. The old man said, I know. I don't know how you found such treasures. Young man, you advanced because you cleansed Leiyin once, right? Your luck is really good. Lei Xingfeng laughed. I also think my luck is good, haha. He was a bit proud. He felt that this kind of advancement speed was very fast. There was another important point. Lei Yin's advancement, coupled with the advancement of his main body, allowed him to have a deeper control of the mirror world. The various restrictions of the mirror world gradually disappeared as Lei Xingfeng's cultivation deepened. He gradually grasped many methods that he didn't know how to use. These methods seemed to appear naturally. Lei Xingfeng subconsciously grasped them without needing to learn, which made him pleasantly surprised. The old man said, I have a place, there are many high-grade treasures there. I don't know if you're interested in going. Someone said, there are many good places, but you can't go in. The old man said, the place I want to go is the death chapter. Not a good place. Xingfeng shook his head. That place is too dangerous. The chances of dying are high. The old man said, we have 9 people here. We can go together. Xingfeng said, too many people won't do. I know this place. Although I haven't been there, I know that the more people there are, the more dangerous it is. Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, what's the death chapter? Xingfeng said, it is a land of death with many restrictions. It is said that even people who are proficient in restrictions will not be able to avoid death there. Lei Xingfeng's interest was piqued. However, he also knew that he couldn't allow too many people to go. Once there were too many people, there would be more people who would trigger the restriction. There would be a time when a person's strength was limited, but the restriction's power could last for a long time. The old man thought about it and agreed. He said, well, it's rare for us to have so many people, and our strength is unprecedentedly strong. We can always find some benefits. Someone said, you're thinking too much. This is a place for one-on-one fights. At most, there will be 2 or 3 people working together. Any more, and there won't be any benefits. The old man said dejectedly, that's true. All right, let's just pretend I didn't say anything. Lei Xingfeng came in front of the old man and said, give me the location of the secret door. Others didn't dare to go, but that didn't mean he didn't. He relied on his proficiency in restrictions. The old man wanted to refuse. This place wasn't easy to enter. If he had the coordinates of a secret door, it would be easy to enter. Just as he was about to refuse, he saw Lei Xingfeng holding a small bottle of 7-colored water. Although it wasn't enough for him, it was good to have more. He secretly gave the coordinates of a secret door to Lei Xingfeng. The old man took the small bottle, shook his head, and sighed. I have entered this place before. Unfortunately, I didn't go deep. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Why didn't you go deep? Isn't there a lot of good things?" The old man said, "It's too dangerous. I have never seen such perverted restrictions. It's scary." Lei Xingfeng said, "Since it's so dangerous, why do we have to go together?" The old man said, "I want to take turns resisting the restrictions. That way, we might be able to go further." Someone snorted. "Stop dreaming. The more people there are, the crazier the restrictions will be. It's not like there aren't people going in together. The consequences will be disastrous." The old man said, "Forget it. Let's just pretend I didn't say anything." He was quite satisfied with the small bottle of 7-colored water in exchange for a set of coordinates. Lei Xingfeng gave a meaningful glance and said, "I'm going to rest." Xingfeng immediately followed him to the wooden shed. Only then did the crowd disperse and trade in 2s and 3s. However, they didn't have many good things left. Xingfeng whispered, "You really want to go to the death chapter?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Why not?" Xingfeng said, "It's very dangerous." Lei Xingfeng laughed. "It's not like there isn't danger anywhere." Xingfeng was stunned. He couldn't help but admit that Lei Xingfeng was right. He nodded and said, "Yeah, it's not like there isn't danger anywhere. All right, let's go together." Lei Xingfeng gave the coordinates to Xingfeng. In this place, Lei Xingfeng was still willing to go with Xingfeng. Although he would have to share a portion of the loot, with an expert like him around, their safety was guaranteed. This guy's strength was super strong. Xingfeng said, "You should rest first. After all, you just advanced not long ago." Lei Xingfeng was actually very tired. He nodded and said, "Okay." Outside the wooden shed, the rain was still pouring. However, the rain was slightly weaker than before. Lei Xingfeng sat on a chair and slowly calmed his heart. He sat there for 2 days. Even though Lei Xingfeng was resting, the Lei Yin in his body was constantly changing. This was something that hadn't finished evolving during his advancement. Not only did it consume the materials he swallowed, but it also consumed a large amount of energy. 2 days later, Lei Xingfeng opened his eyes. Only now did he truly feel the benefits of advancing. Lei Xingfeng didn't need to fight to know the power of his true body. The kind of surging power directly spread out from his heart. It was a very crazy feeling. He couldn't help but grin. If his strength was in the Mingzhe Alliance, he would probably be at the top. However, he wouldn't return to the Mingzhe Alliance unless there was a special reason. Xingfeng was also a little jealous, but he didn't show it on his face. He said, "They've all left. There's only the 2 of us here. Shall we go to the death chapter now?" Lei Xingfeng nodded. "All right, let's go." This was also the benefit of increasing his strength. Xingfeng began to pay attention to Lei Xingfeng's opinion. Xingfeng opened the secret door. The 2 followed the old man's coordinates and walked through the door. In a few breaths of time, the 2 entered the location of the death chapter. The surroundings were dark. Lei Xingfeng and Xingfeng stood still. From the moment they came out, the 2 didn't move at all. This was common sense that Lei Xingfeng had told Xingfeng. If they didn't move, they wouldn't trigger the restrictions. They could only move after they had observed clearly. Lei Xingfeng's eyes flickered with a silver light. In just a moment, he had clearly observed the restrictions around them. He was secretly shocked because the restrictions here were extremely complicated. He said, "We're in the restrictions. Don't move. Watch my movements and then follow me." Xingfeng nodded cautiously. He knew how perverse the restrictions were. It would be best if they didn't trigger the restrictions. They followed Lei Xingfeng and slowly walked forward. Lei Xingfeng walked very slowly and even stopped to observe from time to time. Xingfeng didn't feel anything, but in Lei Xingfeng's eyes, the restrictions here were very powerful. He didn't want to trigger them at all. All the restrictions here were moving nodes. This gave Lei Xingfeng a headache. However, he was very experienced and found a way out. While walking carefully, Lei Xingfeng said, If we really follow that guy's idea and gather 9 people in, we'll be in trouble. Xingfeng asked why. Lei Xingfeng said, if 9 people come in, I won't be able to take care of them. It will be unavoidable to trigger the restrictions. At that time, it will be very troublesome. Xingfeng said, I have my doubts too. I can't figure out what that old guy wants to do. Lei Xingfeng said, he probably wants to find a scapegoat. The more people there are, the more power there is. However, in the restrictions, the weaker ones will be in trouble. Xingfeng said, no one is stupid, so no one came. No, it's the 2 of us. I only dare to come with someone like you who is proficient in restrictions. Otherwise, I would have hesitated. He was now extremely confident in Xingfeng. This journey had been without any surprises or dangers, and they had even obtained many good things. Therefore, even if they entered the death chapter, Xingfeng was confident that they could at least leave safely. Even if they triggered the restrictions, he believed that Lei Xingfeng could find a secret door. Without triggering the restrictions, it meant that they could see their surroundings. This was the real environment. If the restrictions were triggered, then it would be different. It was very likely that they would enter an illusion. Once they entered an illusion, they would be in an extremely disadvantageous situation. Being able to see the real environment and Lei Xingfeng being able to avoid triggering the restrictions, the 2 of them were relatively safe. Lei Xingfeng was very cautious. He could see that this restriction was still intact, but he didn't know how the restrictions inside were. Step by step, they dodged left and right from time to time. As Lei Xingfeng's movements became more and more strange, Xingfeng was forced to follow suit. When Lei Xingfeng jumped over, Xingfeng also jumped over. When Lei Xingfeng crawled on the ground, Xingfeng also crawled on the ground. Neither of them dared to be careless. Gradually, Lei Xingfeng's face revealed a happy expression. He said, we are at the edge of the restriction circle. There will soon be an empty space for us to rest. I have to observe carefully and take a break. I'm too tired. It wasn't his body that was tired, but his eyes that were tired. He had relied on his eyes to reach this place. Until now, they hadn't found any treasures, but Lei Xingfeng was sweating profusely. He was afraid that he or Xingfeng would be careless and trigger the restrictions. That would be a huge problem. Finally, Lei Xingfeng took a step forward. He quickly took a few steps forward, turned around, and said, all right, we are out. Ha! This is the most nervous I have ever been. Chapter 759. Xingfeng followed him out and asked why. Xingfeng spoke. This is a series of compound restriction formations, and the worst part is that this is the starting point of the illusion formation. The moment one enters it, they will be trapped in a killing formation, and this killing formation, I can't see through it. Xingfeng pondered for a moment and said, that old man is up to no good. This coordinate is quite sinister. I don't know how he escaped. Lei Xingfeng said, if he is strong enough, he will have a way to escape. Well, luckily I am proficient in restriction arrays. Otherwise, I would be in a mess. Even if I don't die, I will lose a layer of skin. Xingfeng said, rest for a while. We will move after you recover. He more or less understood Lei Xingfeng's movement pattern. Generally speaking, he would need to rest after passing through a restriction array. Otherwise, it would be difficult to continue. Lei Xingfeng nodded and agreed. He sat down and began to recover his eyes. Although his eyes didn't tear up, they were sore and unbearable. There was no trick to this recovery. He could only cultivate slowly. As time passed, he would recover slowly. A few hours would be enough. The environment here was like dusk. The surroundings were incomparably desolate. There were no signs of life, be it animals or plants. There were no traces of life at all. The ground was littered with gravel of various sizes, and these stones looked more like broken bones. Because these stones were grayish-white, they looked rather strange. Lei Xingfeng was busy resting and didn't pay attention to the surroundings. Xingfeng squatted on the ground and held a grayish-white stone in his hand. He seemed to be thinking about something. The surroundings were terrifyingly silent. There was no sound at all. It was as if the entire world had died. Xian Feng's eyes finally felt better. Only then did he open them. There's no change, right? Xing Feng smiled bitterly. Besides the two of us, there's no sound at all. Don't you think this place is quite strange? It is so gloomy. No wonder it is called the Death Chapter. Well, it is more accurate to call it the Land of Death. Lei Xingfeng said, it doesn't matter what it is called. As long as there are treasures, it will be fine. Xing Feng said, if we want to obtain something good, we'll probably have to go deeper. We should be in the outer area. Even if there is something good, it would have already been taken away. Lei Xingfeng said, yes, this is indeed the outer region. If you want something good, you still have to go in. Wait a moment. Let me observe for a while. There were many restrictions in the surroundings, but Lei Xingfeng found that there were actually gaps between the restrictions. This discovery made him very surprised. If he went in like this, he could save a lot of time and energy. He couldn't see any traps, so he said, follow me. Along the way, he looked for the gaps between the restrictions. When he really couldn't get through, he would enter the restrictions and look for the narrowest gap to pass through. This way, his speed would be much faster. Soon, Xing Feng noticed the difference in their speed and asked, why is it so smooth? Lei Xingfeng said, the path we took, has no restrictions. Xing Feng was surprised. Why aren't there any barriers? Are there no restrictions in this area? Xian Feng spoke. Of course there are restrictions. If you were to walk, there's an 80 to 90% chance that you'd bump into one. We're walking through the gaps between restrictions. Of course, we're walking very fast. While they were talking, Lei Xingfeng suddenly stopped. He observed for a while and said with a bitter smile, there's no path. Xing Feng said, well, is it because you're so proud that there's no path? Lei Xingfeng looked at Xing Feng speechlessly and said, probably, maybe. There are restrictions everywhere. This restriction is very, very big. All they could see were restriction notes. Of course, they couldn't find the path. Xing Feng raised his hand and said, okay, I shouldn't have asked. After walking along the edge of the restriction for a while, Lei Xingfeng still couldn't find any gaps. He knew he couldn't take any shortcuts, so he said, we have to go through the restriction. This restriction is a bit different from the ones I've seen before. So follow me. If we're not careful, we might be trapped inside. Xing Feng said, is this restriction very powerful? Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, there are some places I don't understand. It would be best if we don't touch the restriction. In this restriction, all the restriction nodes were moving at a very fast speed. It was really hard to not touch them. Even if you stood still, these restriction nodes would still bump into you. It didn't need many. As long as 5 or 6 restriction nodes touched your body, the whole restriction formation would be activated, and the attack would follow. So, they had to keep looking for gaps and moving. This time, it was really a test for Lei Xingfeng. Xing Feng said, so powerful? Okay, I'll stay close. I'll be careful. Lei Xingfeng observed for a while and thought for a while. Then he said, let's go. This time, Xing Feng was very close. Lei Xingfeng was walking very fast, so Xing Feng had to follow him like a shadow. He couldn't be careless at all. Come closer. Don't stop. Lei Xingfeng reminded him as he moved forward quickly. He used all kinds of postures to avoid the restriction nodes. The two of them moved forward quickly. After walking for less than half an hour, they were both sweating profusely. Xing Feng said nervously, damn it. It's too scary. It was really too difficult to follow. Lei Xingfeng said, there's a gap in the restriction. Let's go there. We can't stop. Come closer. Hurry. Xing Feng was really good. He copied Lei Xingfeng's postures perfectly. It was like one person was dancing and the other person had to synchronize with him. The key was that the dancer didn't know whether he would jump or wave his hands. The dancer also didn't have any rehearsal and had to synchronize with him at all times. The difference couldn't be more than 1 second. The two of them danced in the restriction. Unfortunately, they were two big men. If they were seen by others, they would be scared to death. After circling around the gap, Lei Xingfeng didn't dare to hesitate. He chose a spot that he was most confident in and passed through quickly. When Lei Xingfeng entered the gap, he was almost paralyzed. Xing Feng wasn't any better. The two of them didn't have time to see if there were any treasures. They both sat down on the ground and panted heavily. It wasn't physical exhaustion, but mental exhaustion. They were really tired to the bone. Both of them were sweating profusely and panting with their heads down. After a while, Xingfeng shook his head and said, "Your movements are too fast. I almost couldn't keep up." Lei Xingfeng looked at Xingfeng and gave him a thumbs up. He said, "Senior, I really admire you. You can keep up with me. What can you keep up with? It's incredible." He admired Xingfeng from the bottom of his heart. Even he couldn't do this. Xingfeng had truly achieved the unity of mind and spirit. He could see with his eyes and do it with his body. Xingfeng smiled bitterly and said, "Actually, if we continue, I won't be able to keep up. I've tried my best." Lei Xingfeng said, I know. Actually, I can't hold on any longer. Fortunately, there is a gap here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to hold on." Xingfeng was puzzled and asked, "Why is it so hard?" In fact, Lei Xingfeng and Xingfeng didn't know that this restriction was the famous death restriction. Almost no one could pass through this restriction. It was very abnormal. Even if Lei Xingfeng could see the restriction node, it would be difficult for him to pass through. Lei Xingfeng said, "We still don't know where the next restriction node is. Let's rest before we continue. Otherwise, we won't be able to hold on for long." Xingfeng finally calmed down and said, "Okay, let's rest first." He didn't want to rush Lei Xingfeng at all. As long as they could move forward smoothly, he could pay any price, let alone rest. Lei Xingfeng stood up and walked around. He said, "I didn't expect there to be nothing here." Xingfeng said, "Maybe we haven't reached our destination. We probably have to go in." Lei Xingfeng said, "That's good. If there's nothing, then there's nothing to think about." While he rested, he looked around. From time to time, his eyes would emit silver light. It hadn't been long since they entered, so his eyes weren't unbearable yet. The restriction nodes around the gap were not only moving fast, but they were also dense. This affected Lei Xingfeng's observation. Of course, he didn't dare to fly up to the sky to observe. There were many restriction nodes in the sky, and these restriction nodes were very strange. They moved in groups at high speed. It was very difficult to avoid them in the sky because they moved too fast. It was dark and gloomy. From where Lei Xingfeng was standing, he couldn't see far. Even if he had a pair of extraordinary eyes, he still couldn't see far, especially the restriction nodes. However, this didn't stop him from finding the next restriction node. Generally speaking, a restriction node was surrounded by a large number of restriction nodes. Soon, Lei Xingfeng said, "Okay, we can continue. Let's stick to the previous rule. Stay close to each other. Otherwise, the restriction will explode. Also, if the restriction really explodes, release your real body immediately. Don't get sucked away by the restriction. If that happens, I won't be able to save you." Following Lei Xingfeng out of the restriction node, which was the shelter inside the restriction node, the two started their strange dance again. They kept moving forward. The two's cooperation was getting better and better. Soon, Xingfeng and Lei Xingfeng were synchronized. The two's movements were almost the same. The most surprising thing was that the two's speed was very fast. Not only were they walking fast, but they were also moving fast. This time, because they had already set their sights on a foothold, it only took them 10 minutes to successfully enter the blank spot with restrictions. A small piece of land without restrictions was an excellent resting spot for them, so they wouldn't make any mistakes along the way. Rest, move forward, rest again, and move forward again. After walking for about 2 days, their luck was very good. They didn't make any mistakes. The two gradually relaxed. Xingfeng exclaimed, "I don't know about others, but you are the first person to pass through the restriction node like this. It's amazing." Lei Xingfeng bowed slightly and said with a smile, "Thank you for the compliment. It's an honor." He accepted it without hesitation. Chapter 760. Xingfeng smiled and said, "We should be able to cross this restriction soon, right?" Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Logically speaking, we should be able to cross it soon. However, I dare not say for sure. This place is too unfamiliar. Moreover, The restriction here is different from other places. I don't know if we can cross it successfully. Xing Feng's eyes were filled with hope. He said, perhaps I can gather all the materials I need to advance in this place. I've been waiting for too long. Lei Xingfeng said, perhaps there is nothing inside. If there isn't, then it would be tragic. Xing Feng said, don't say that. There must be something inside. It would be strange if there wasn't anything inside. I've heard of this place before. Moreover, it is said to be the most mysterious and terrifying place. There must be something good inside. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but laugh. He also knew that Xing Feng was full of hope for this place. If his hopes were dashed, then this guy would probably flip out. Xing Feng said, forget it. Once we cross this restriction, we will know everything. Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, that should be the case. Xing Feng was a little disheartened. He said, can you not say what should be the case? That is the case. Lei Xingfeng said, all right, let's not say such discouraging words. Xing Feng said, yes, we must have confidence. He was a little crazy after hearing Lei Xingfeng's words. Lei Xingfeng said, all right, let's continue. He couldn't stand listening to Xing Feng's nagging. Xing Feng said, how can there be no treasures in such a difficult place? Based on my experience, the harder it is to enter a place, the better it will be. Therefore, you can't say that. He continued nagging. Lei Xingfeng turned his head and said, are you going or not? Xing Feng immediately cowered. He said, yes, let's go. Lei Xingfeng said again, don't talk about irrelevant things on the way, and don't talk too much. Xing Feng immediately calmed down. Fortunately, he knew the severity of the situation. He knew that he should talk as little as possible in the restriction so that Lei Xingfeng wouldn't be distracted. Lei Xingfeng finally stepped out of the empty space and entered the restriction. Xing Feng didn't dare to delay and followed closely behind him. Before entering the restriction, Lei Xingfeng had already chosen the next restriction blank space. Therefore, the direction to advance was determined. In general, they didn't advance in a straight line. Instead, they moved forward in a zigzag path, jumping from one restriction blank space to the next. This way of walking ensured that they had enough time to rest. It also ensured that the two of them were highly focused so that they wouldn't get tired and have problems. A very stable way of walking allowed the two of them to relax slightly. Of course, within the restriction, the two of them were still on high alert. Actually, the most tired of the two of them was Xing Feng, as he couldn't see the restriction nodes and was completely relying on Xing Feng to move forward. He was like a blind man walking on a path filled with thorns. If there was no one to lead him, he wouldn't be able to avoid the thorns. Because the two of them had a good tacit understanding, they didn't encounter any problems along the way. They smoothly arrived at the restriction blank space that Lei Xingfeng had observed earlier. However, there was a problem with this restriction blank space. This wasn't a restriction blank space, but a dense restriction point. Lei Xingfeng only discovered the problem when he got closer. He said as he moved, this isn't a restriction blank space. Let's change to another place. Follow closely. As he spoke, he had to avoid moving restriction nodes and observe at the same time. In an instant, Lei Xingfeng's forehead was covered in sweat. They had to find a spot where they could rest. Otherwise, even if he could persevere, Xing Feng wouldn't be able to. It should be known that it was very difficult for Xing Feng to walk in her current state. Therefore, they had to find a spot as soon as possible. Only then could they relax their highly concentrated minds. Lei Xingfeng looked around nervously and tried his best to avoid touching restriction nodes. This made him very tired. The silver light in his eyes flickered continuously. He said as he observed, this way, if this isn't a restriction blank space, I won't be able to control it. At this time, Xing Feng was ready to risk everything. He said, if we can't, let's force our way through. We should be halfway through the restriction. Xing Feng spoke, and we've already passed more than half of this restriction. I estimate that after a few more empty spots, we should be out of it. This restriction is truly perverse. Once it activates, even I don't know what will happen. So if we can avoid it, we should try our best not to, in case it becomes too hard to deal with. Xing Feng said, I will try my best to persist. You continue. Don't delay. The longer we delay, the easier it will be for something to happen. Let's go. Lei Xingfeng stopped, looking for restriction blank spaces. Instead, he walked crazily in one direction, which was the outside of the restriction circle. At this time, he understood that the closer he was to the edge of the restriction, the more advantageous it would be for him. He had analyzed that they should be near the edge of the restriction circle. Perhaps they would be able to leave soon. As long as there was a restriction blank space for him to take a breather, the restriction wouldn't be able to trap the two of them. As they walked and observed, Lei Xingfeng found that the restrictions here were getting denser. This also proved that this was the edge of the restriction circle. The further they went, the more difficult it was. Xingfeng gradually couldn't keep up. Xingfeng said, "I can't go on. If we continue like this, there will definitely be a problem." Lei Xingfeng said, "Prepare to release your true body." Xingfeng said, "Okay." Until now, Lei Xingfeng still hadn't seen any restriction blank space. There were actually no restriction blank spaces in this area. The dense restriction nodes were wandering everywhere. If they were careless, they would touch them. Xingfeng had already touched 2 restriction nodes in a row, causing a slight reaction. If they touched a few more, the restriction would explode. After walking for a few hundred meters, Xingfeng was already sweating profusely. He said, "I can't go on. I have to release my true body." Lei Xingfeng said, "Okay, we will release it together. Our true bodies have to be hand in hand." Xingfeng said, "Okay." If he didn't bring Xingfeng, Lei Xingfeng could still continue walking. However, with Xingfeng, this path couldn't be continued. No one could always maintain a tacit understanding. This was really too difficult. Lei Xingfeng felt that it was a miracle that they could last until now. Unfortunately, it was difficult to continue at this point. Lei Xingfeng didn't force it. He knew that Xingfeng should be at his limit. He shouted, "Begin!" Xingfeng released his true body. In an instant, he touched countless restriction nodes. Lei Xingfeng also released his true body. The two of them reached out and held hands. This way, they could prevent the restriction from separating. At the same time, their combined strength could also resist the restriction's teleportation, allowing them to stay in place. In an instant, the weather changed. The originally clear ground suddenly changed. They were surrounded by mountains and dense forests. In the distance, they could even see a flowing river. Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Don't move! Don't move!" The two of them held hands tightly. The other hand could still move. A huge force wrapped around the two of them, tried to shake their position. Lei Xingfeng slapped out and instantly dispersed the force. Xingfeng also punched out. Instantly, the surrounding trees and mountains collapsed. Thick smoke billowed. Lei Xingfeng knew that this was an illusion. Therefore, his eyes emitted a silver light. He immediately saw that the two of them were still standing in place. They didn't move. With just a slap and Xingfeng's punch, the surrounding environment completely changed. Forest fire. Then, countless flames rose up. The entire world became a world of fire. All kinds of flames began to burn the two of them. Moreover, the surroundings were filled with lava. It was like a flood was spreading. Xingfeng shouted, "Where do we go?" The most difficult thing to do when trapped in a restriction was to know where to go. When the illusion appeared, it was impossible to distinguish between north, south, east, and west. It was easy to walk into the center of the restriction. Lei Xingfeng could see clearly. His eyes could see through the essence of the restriction. Therefore, the direction forward was not difficult for him. He pulled Xingfeng and walked. They stepped into the lava. Xingfeng waved his fist and was about to attack. Lei Xingfeng said, "Don't attack. Just strengthen the defense. Don't worry about anything else." The flames burned brighter and brighter. The two of them were well protected by their true bodies. Although they could feel the heat, it wasn't enough to hurt them, especially since Xingfeng had stopped Xingfeng's attack. This way, the might of the restriction could be controlled and wouldn't cause a violent reaction. Under the control of the restriction's power, the restriction could not hurt the two of them. In addition, Lei Xingfeng could find the way out. The restriction's power was not as great as they imagined. After taking 7 or 8 steps, which were very long, the surrounding flames changed again. They formed several flames that looked like dancing fire dragons. The color of the flames changed from scarlet to light blue. The temperature of the flames reached a terrifying level. Lei Xingfeng did not dare to let the fire dragons burn him this time. He shouted, "Break them!" After saying that, Xiao Chun punched out and shattered a fire dragon coiling around him. Xingfeng attacked as well, instantly shattering a 100-meter-long fire dragon with a punch. The fire dragon turned into sparks that filled the sky and scattered. After taking a few more steps, the sparks in the sky gathered again. They formed new fire dragons or fire snakes that quickly wrapped around the two of them. As they moved forward, more and more fire snakes were formed. They also became thicker and stronger. Lei Xingfeng charged forward without caring about anything. Xingfeng said, "Why is it getting stronger?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Of course. This restriction is an illusion, but it has a strong attack power. You just have to attack the fire dragons. I will take you out." As Lei Xingfeng approached the edge of the restriction's attack became more violent. It seemed to know that once the two of them went out, the restriction would not be able to attack. Therefore, the closer they were to the edge, the stronger the attack became. When all the fire dragons gathered together and formed a huge fire dragon, Xingfeng was frightened. He said, "Wow, this restriction is crazy." Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Block it. We will be out soon." Xingfeng could only attack with one hand. He also shouted, "Together, attack at the same time." Seeing the fire dragon crazily attacking with countless flames, Lei Xingfeng also used all his strength. He shouted, "Together!" Chapter 761. Two people, two huge true bodies, two huge fists smashed out at the same time. They all knew that if they were pounced on by the fire dragon, although they wouldn't die, once their feet left the ground, it was very likely that they would be teleported to the center of the formation. That would be troublesome. Boom! Boom! The fire dragon sank, but it did not shatter. This thing had gathered all the power of the formation and had become abnormally strong. Xingfeng and Lei Xingfeng had only smashed it to the ground. The two's tacit understanding was shown at this moment. They both lifted their feet at almost the same time, kicking out with all their might. Boom! A huge fire dragon head was shattered by their kicks, turning into flames that filled the sky. Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Charge!" The two rushed out a few steps, and the flames quickly gathered again. Just as the fire dragon head was about to condense, Lei Xingfeng roared and punched the waist of the fire dragon. Xingfeng kicked back, instantly shattering the dragon head. Before the fire dragon could condense again, Lei Xingfeng had already seen the boundary of the formation. The boundary of the formation was clearly seen in his eyes. However, Xingfeng could still see the boundless flames, and he could not see the nature of the formation. Pulling Xingfeng, the two madly rushed forward with brute force. When they were just a few steps away, the fire dragon finally finished condensing. It roared and madly pounced forward. Lei Xingfeng knew that with the size of his true body, although he could cover a considerable distance with each step, his true body was also relatively heavy, and his speed was not as fast. Therefore, he had to delay or shatter the fire dragon before he could leave with ease. The restriction was huge, and the two holding hands limited their attacking power. However, the two had been working together for a long time, so they were still able to resist the fire dragon that was madly trying to entangle them. This fire dragon was still growing. Its originally 3 to 5 meters thick body had grown to more than 8 meters, and its length had reached almost 1,000 meters. It was a huge monster. Fortunately, they were fighting with their true bodies. Both of them were more than 100 meters tall, and Xingfeng's true body was even bigger and more condensed. Compared to Lei Xingfeng, he indeed looked a lot stronger. However, Lei Xingfeng had also discovered a secret. He was starting to approach Xingfeng's level. Before, when he saw Xingfeng, the latter was so powerful that it made people despair. There was no way he could compete with him. The two of them were doing well. Xingfeng grabbed the fire dragon that was pouncing over and fiercely pressed it down. Lei Xingfeng raised his foot and ruthlessly stomped on the fire dragon's head. With a loud explosion, a hole appeared in the fire dragon's head. Lei Xingfeng stomped, and Xingfeng suppressed. The two of them worked together and quickly exploded the fire dragon's head again. Although the fire dragon's head was made of flames, it had a special characteristic. After it exploded, the fire dragon's activity level would be greatly reduced. At this time, Lei Xingfeng said, "Let's go." The two of them did not hesitate to give up on attacking and quickly rushed out. Because it was only a few steps away, no matter how heavy their true bodies were, it was still easy to walk. Therefore, the two of them rushed out of the formation in a few breaths. As soon as Lei Xingfeng came out of the formation, he shouted, "Withdraw." The two of them withdrew their true bodies. Releasing their true bodies required a large amount of energy, which was provided by the seal. Therefore, cultivators were generally not willing to release their true bodies to fight. Once released, it meant that they would have to risk their lives. Of course, releasing their true bodies in the formation had a great advantage. Its defense was extremely high. Before the true body collapsed, no attacks would be able to threaten the true body. After revealing his true body, Lei Xingfeng was relieved. He said, "Our luck is really good. These fire dragons will grow bigger and bigger. As the formation explodes, their numbers will also increase. Every time a fire dragon is destroyed, it will strengthen the other fire dragons. If we rush from the center of the formation to the edge of the formation, senior, we will not be facing one or a few fire dragons. We will be facing dozens or even hundreds of the fire dragons that we saw just now." Xingfeng withdrew his true body. One could see that his face was covered in sweat. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and said, "What a perverted formation. This is the first time I have seen this fire dragon. Before, it was just pure fire. I have never seen a fire dragon that is like a living creature. This formation is really powerful." Lei Xingfeng shook his head and said, "This formation did not even activate. At most, it only used 10% to 20% of the formation's power. Moreover, it was constantly broken by us. Although the formation at the edge of the formation is more powerful, we still have the ability to break through it." Xingfeng was already very satisfied. In the past, when he was trapped in a formation, he was always in a difficult situation. This time, he was prepared and was able to escape from the formation's attack at an extremely fast speed. This kind of experience gave him a deeper understanding of the formation. He also knew the benefits of having a formation grandmaster. Yes, the power of one fire dragon has already made us flustered. If there are more, I really don't know if we can handle it. Lei Xingfeng said, "Actually, if there are more than 10 of these fire dragons, we can handle them. However, these things are endless. Even if we break one of them, it will be useless. Instead, it will strengthen the other fire dragons. If we can't escape from the formation, it will be a desperate situation. The more we fight, the more enemies there will be, or the more powerful they will be. No one can deal with them easily." Xingfeng also agreed with this idea. He said, "This formation is indeed a little different. The fire can actually be like a living creature." Lei Xingfeng said, "This is a more advanced formation. I'm not sure if I can break it. I can only try not to be trapped and not be exhausted to death by the formation." Xingfeng shook his head and looked back at the formation. He said, "Well, what should we do next? Are there any more formations?" Because the formation here was very advanced, even he couldn't understand it. Lei Xingfeng squinted his eyes and stared ahead. This place was still a grayish-white sandy land. After observing for a while, Lei Xingfeng said, "Not only is there a formation, but it seems to be more advanced and more difficult to walk through. At this point, it will be difficult for us to retreat even if we want to." Xingfeng said, "We can't retreat at all. If we retreat at this point, we shouldn't have come to the fantasy sky realm at all. Since we are here, we have to take all the risks." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Well, let's enter the formation again and take a rest first. This formation should not be inferior to the previous one. It might even be stronger. I estimate that we will have to break through it in the later stages." Xingfeng said, "Yes, I have no problem." Lei Xingfeng then took out a thick animal skin cushion and placed it on the sandy ground before sitting down cross-legged. Xingfeng, on the other hand, didn't care and sat down as well. After the battle, although the two didn't consume much of their energy, they were very tired. The pressure was too great. With someone like Lei Xingfeng who knew formations, although it wasn't too dangerous, who knew what kind of strange tricks the formation here would use? If there was an attack that Lei Xingfeng couldn't understand, the two of them would be very likely to be trapped. Who knew what kind of changes the formation would bring? Even if Lei Xingfeng was a formation grandmaster, it wouldn't be of any use. His biggest role was to not touch the formation. However, once he touched the formation, he would be trapped in it, and he would have to resist the formation's attack just like the other cultivators. The only thing that Lei Xingfeng had a huge advantage was that he could see through the formation and choose the right direction to break through. Although it was just a small difference, it was enough to save his life. Ordinary formation masters also had similar skills, but they were much more complicated and could make mistakes. However, they were still much stronger than ordinary cultivators. At least, they could still find the right direction to break through, while the others could only move around randomly. If a cultivator didn't know anything about formations, there were two ways to break through. One was to use strength to break through, and the other was to rely on luck. Those who were lucky could also break through. After resting for half a day, Lei Xingfeng once again released Lei Yin. He was full of energy and said, "Let's go. Follow me." The formation here is even more abnormal. The movement speed of the entire restriction node was at least twice as fast as the one he had just entered. This was a huge challenge. He had to adapt to the situation and find an easy path to take. To Xingfeng, this was an extremely strenuous task. Xingfeng didn't have it easy either. He had to synchronize with Lei Xingfeng and stick close to Lei Xingfeng. There couldn't be too much of a gap between them, or they would easily touch the formation nodes. Along the way, Lei Xingfeng felt that the pressure had reached a peak. The feeling that the formation would explode at any moment made him very anxious. However, no matter how anxious he was, he had to find a way to pass through. He couldn't stop or hesitate. In just 5 minutes, he was sweating profusely. Xingfeng wasn't any better. However, both of them understood that it was best to walk more in the beginning. If they touched the formation now, it would be difficult to walk later. Another 5 minutes passed. Both of them were extremely nervous. At this time, Lei Xingfeng saw a formation node. He said, "Quick, follow me. Don't be distracted. Follow me closely." They approached it bit by bit and walked in a zigzag manner. Gradually, they reached the edge of the formation node. After making a circle with difficulty, they finally found an opportunity and rushed in. Lei Xingfeng sat on the ground and said, "If it's so difficult to walk, why don't we just force our way in?" Xingfeng was very interested. To be honest, following Lei Xingfeng like this was too tiring. It was much more tiring than forcing their way in. Lei Xingfeng said, "I don't know how big this formation is or how powerful it is. Anyway, this formation is beyond my scope of knowledge. However, I instinctively know that this formation is not to be trifled with." Xingfeng was shocked. He said, "Why not?" Lei Xingfeng said, "I don't know the details. However, I think that you won't want to try it again." Xingfeng said, "I don't want to. What's the use?" Lei Xingfeng shook his head silently. He said, "It's useless. If we touch the formation, well, the probability is too high. It's almost impossible to avoid. All right, it seems that we will definitely touch this formation. Whether we are lucky or not depends on whether we are at the edge of the formation when we touch it. If we are at the edge of the formation, then we are really lucky." Chapter 762. Xingfeng forced a smile and said, "So you're saying that the restriction will be triggered sooner or later?" Xingfeng nodded. "That's right, this restriction, if Senior didn't follow me, I would be able to walk further. Perhaps I would be lucky enough to pass it. But with Senior following me, it would be hard after all. There are two of us. Even if we have great chemistry, we are still not as agile as one person. So we will definitely trigger the restriction. It's only a matter of time." Xingfeng said, "Then what should we do?" He did not plan to back out. It was impossible for him to do so. He could not use the secret door here. Lei Xingfeng said, "In this case, we can only delay triggering the restriction. Once we can't control it, we will have to force our way through. At that time, we will be in a passive position. If we reach the edge of the restriction or are not far from it, we might be able to pass it. But if we touch it in the center of the restriction, then we will be in a dilemma." Xingfeng could not help but force a smile and said, "No matter what, I will try my best to keep up with you. I will try my best not to trigger the restriction. Well, if we can't, we will have to force our way through." Lei Xingfeng said, "I will try my best to find a blank spot to rest and recover. But I am afraid that we will not be able to find a blank spot. That will be troublesome. Well, if we can't find a blank spot, returning to the last one is also a solution. Well, I think this is a good idea. At least we won't be forced to force our way through." Xingfeng said, "Well, let's do it this way. Later, you lead the way. I will try my best to keep up." Lei Xingfeng said, "Maybe after this restriction circle passes, we will enter for real. I'm really looking forward to seeing what is inside." Xingfeng said, "Yes, I'm looking forward to it even more. My eyes are red." Compared to the previous restriction circle, this one had more restriction nodes and was moving faster. Lei Xingfeng could not understand how this restriction circle was set up. This restriction circle was beyond his imagination. It was too profound and mysterious, especially the restrictions here. None of them were man-made. They were all formed naturally. Even though Lei Xingfeng saw it with his own eyes, he still found it hard to believe that such a restriction circle could be formed naturally. How could it form such a complicated yet well-organized restriction circle? Moreover, it was so powerful that it was tightly connected and had so few holes. Xingfeng asked, "What's wrong?" Lei Xingfeng shook his head and said, "Nothing." Expelling the doubt out of his mind, he said, "It's time to go." "Yeah, I need to see where to cut in." Xingfeng nodded. Xingfeng said, "Let's go." The two walked along the restriction circle. The gap between the restriction circle and the restriction circle was not very long. It was about 2,000 to 3,000 meters long. Some places were wider, while others were narrower. There seemed to be a line between the two. The two walked on this line. On the left was the restriction circle that they had just entered, while on the right was the new restriction circle. Xingfeng walked as he observed, his eyes occasionally spitting out a silver glow. In Xingfeng's eyes, both sides were the same. The ground was empty, and the ground was full of broken grayish-white stones. The stones in the restriction circle were even smaller, just like gravel. Outside the two restriction circles, the stones in the areas that were not affected by the restriction circle were bigger. Xingfeng's heart skipped a beat, and he couldn't help but show a happy expression. To prove his idea, he asked, "The area affected by the restriction circle, is it here?" While speaking, Xingfeng took out a stick and drew a line on the ground. Just 1 foot away from the edge of the restriction circle, he used the stick to draw. Lei Xingfeng said in surprise, "Hey, you can tell the location of the restriction circle?" Xingfeng smiled. "Now you know what I think." "Haha, not bad, not bad." Although this discovery was small, if one walked carefully, he could find out if there were any restriction circles. He could even find out the exact location of the restriction circle. Lei Xingfeng looked at him curiously. He knew that the restriction circles were invisible. Low-level restriction circles were easy to find, but the restriction circles here were all high-level. They were so profound that even he couldn't understand them sometimes. How did Xingfeng find them? Xingfeng pointed to the ground and said, "Look at the ground. The stones in the restriction circle are different from the stones outside." Lei Xingfeng observed for a while. He also saw the obvious difference. Inside the restriction circle, there were gravel. It was rare to find a big stone. Outside the restriction circle, there were grayish-white stones the size of walnuts. Some of them were as big as a fist. The two were clearly separated, but if one didn't pay attention, it would be impossible to find out. This was not much help to Lei Xingfeng, but it was much more helpful to Xingfeng. He could detect the existence of the restriction circle in advance. With this discovery, Xingfeng felt much better. In fact, This discovery was not much help to him after he entered the restriction circle. However, he was still very happy. Experience could be accumulated little by little. Lei Xingfeng walked back and forth on this empty path twice. Finally, he found a relatively good entry point. There were fewer restriction nodes here, and the movement speed was relatively slow. The most valuable thing was that he could vaguely find a relatively easy path to walk on from here. Xingfeng saw Lei Xingfeng standing still and knew that he was going to enter from here. He said, "How about this point?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Comparatively speaking, this point should be the best. However, I still need to observe for a while to find the best path to pass through." He had to observe carefully. This would take some time to observe the movement pattern of the restriction nodes. There was always a pattern. After careful observation, Lei Xingfeng gained a lot. He also found a point where the restriction nodes were relatively concentrated. He knew that there should be a restriction blank spot there. The restriction blank spot was a bit like an oasis in the desert. It was a unique phenomenon of the restriction circle here. In the outside world, there was no restriction blank spot. When he was designing the restriction circle, he did not consider this problem. Now, finding the restriction blank spot was a task that Lei Xingfeng had to complete, especially the first restriction blank spot. As long as he found it, he would be able to enter it. This would give him a chance, because at the restriction blank spot, he could rest, recover his physical and mental exhaustion, and recover his stinging eyes. Finding a possible restriction blank spot was not enough. Lei Xingfeng continued to search. Soon, he found the second restriction blank spot. Both restriction blank spots were on the path. If he could not enter one of them, he could have a backup. This was the safest way. Lei Xingfeng stood for a whole hour before sitting down. He closed his eyes and said, "Let me rest for a while. Then we will go in." Xingfeng nodded and said, "Okay." Lei Xingfeng intuitively felt that this restriction was very difficult to walk through. If he was not careful, he would suffer a loss this time. However, he dared to go in like this because he had the mirror realm. If he could not withstand it, he could escape into the mirror realm. With his current strength and ability to control the mirror realm, he could already use the mirror realm in a large-scale restriction circle. After resting, Lei Xingfeng stood up and said, "Are you ready?" Xingfeng nodded and said, "No problem. I will be right behind you." Lei Xingfeng took a deep breath and stepped into the restriction. Once again, he started to dance. He had no choice. If he wanted to avoid touching the restriction nodes, he had to do this. The two of them were very strong. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng did all kinds of difficult and inhuman movements. Xingfeng, who was behind him, followed suit. No matter how difficult the movements were, he had to do the same. He also had to keep up with Lei Xingfeng and stick close to Lei Xingfeng. This was very difficult. Lei Xingfeng was very focused. The silver light in his eyes was constantly flickering. His head was like a rattle drum, constantly shaking. He had to observe the movement of the restriction nodes around him. Xingfeng did not know why, so his head kept shaking. To be honest, Xingfeng shook his head until he was dizzy. Along the way, there was no danger. Soon, they came into contact with the first restriction node. Lei Xingfeng only took a quick glance and felt a chill in his heart. He said, "Let's go. This is fake. There are no blank spots." Lei Xingfeng had noticed this from the beginning. Therefore, he did not hesitate to turn around and leave. He had already chosen the route and would not be flustered. Xingfeng immediately followed. During this time, he bumped into one or two restriction nodes. Fortunately, his reaction was fast. He was frightened and broke out in a cold sweat. He could feel this kind of contact. He said, "I bumped into a restriction node." Lei Xingfeng could see it from the movement of the restriction. He said, "Steady. It's okay. Just don't bump into it continuously." Xingfeng was sweating profusely. He said, "We have to hurry. I can't hold on much longer." Lei Xingfeng said, "Hold on a little longer. We're almost there." There was something he did not dare to say. If the next restriction node was not a blank spot, he would be at a loss. This was because he did not know where the third restriction node was, which meant that he did not know where the third restriction node was. At that time, he would have to force his way through. The worst thing was that the two of them had just set off. They had only walked less than 1 kilometer at most. Xing Feng gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, I will hold on." The two of them gritted their teeth and held on. They moved forward bit by bit. The route was even more winding. There were places where they had to go back and forth several times before they could pass through. Finally, they arrived at the second restriction node. Lei Xingfeng had to observe the movement of the restriction nodes, so he could only sneak a glance. He said happily, "Good. We have a place to rest." Xingfeng said, "Let's take it slow. I can still hold on." He knew that this was not the time to rush Lei Xingfeng. The closer they were to success, the easier it was for problems to occur. Lei Xingfeng circled around the restriction node area. After walking for less than half a circle, he found the path to enter. He said, "This time we have to be fast. Follow me closely. Our movements must be synchronized." Xingfeng agreed. "Okay." He stared fixedly at Xian Feng, not daring to be distracted in the slightest. Chapter 763. The two of them hopped into the empty spot of the restriction in unison. After they entered, they both collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but say, "This restriction space is too hard to walk through." Xingfeng shook his head and said, "Walking like this definitely won't work. Let's just force our way through." Lei Xingfeng said, "For now, we can't force our way through. No matter how hard it is, we have to walk slowly. This restriction space is very powerful. I'm afraid when the time comes, we won't be able to resist it. If we can't get out, we'll be in trouble." Xingfeng didn't know how powerful this restriction space was. However, he seemed to have seen some clues from the previous restriction space. After thinking for a while, he nodded and said, "All right, I'll listen to you." At this point, if he didn't listen to Lei Xingfeng, who else could he listen to? Xingfeng relied on his strength. However, his strength wasn't enough to deal with this restriction space. If he listened to Lei Xingfeng, he might have a chance. Xingfeng said, "Forget it. Let's not talk about this. We'll take one step at a time. You should rest first." He knew that Lei Xingfeng had to rest every once in a while. Otherwise, it would be hard for him to continue. Therefore, he took the initiative to let Lei Xingfeng rest. There was nothing in this blank spot. It was different from the other places. Xian Feng and Xingfeng both understood this point, which is why they placed their hopes in this place after not gaining anything despite the danger they faced. This time, they rested for a long time, more than 3 hours. During this time, Lei Xingfeng spent most of his time observing. He wanted to find the next restriction space. This kind of place was very important to the two of them. They definitely couldn't lose it. They had to find one or two, preferably more than two. Only then would they have a chance to rest. This was because Lei Xingfeng definitely didn't have time to observe while walking through the restriction space. He had to determine the location beforehand. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to find it. After searching back and forth, they found a restriction space in the distance. It was at least 1,500 meters away. If they didn't have good eyesight, they wouldn't be able to see it. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help smiling bitterly. The restriction space here was too unique. Xian Feng spoke, "I don't have the confidence to find the next restriction blank spot. The one we've seen now is most likely due to the distance. It seems to be densely packed. So if we don't find a restriction blank spot this time, then we'll have to force our way in. Be prepared." Being prepared and not being prepared were two different things. Xingfeng knew this very well. He said, "Are you sure there's a place to rest?" Xian Feng nodded. "It looks like a place to rest, but in front of us, that might not be the case. This restriction is too complicated. I can't see it clearly and can't predict it." Xian Feng asked, "Kill who?" "Oh, you want to kill that old man?" Xingfeng said, "Yes, that's right. If you can't get anything and make me work so hard, humph, don't let me see him. Kill him." Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but laugh. He said, "Even if it's him, he probably doesn't know what's going on inside. Don't be angry." Xingfeng said, "I'm holding it in. It's such a difficult process. It's simply too torturous. Moreover, we haven't gotten anything up until now. It's really depressing." Lei Xingfeng said, "Come on, let's move forward." His words made his heart feel weak. However, He couldn't stay in the same place. He had to go out sooner or later. The two of them walked out, one in front and one behind. As soon as they were out of the circle, Lei Xingfeng immediately began to dance. There was no other way. If he didn't do this, he would have touched the restriction space. If it was someone else, they wouldn't have been able to reach this place. Along the way, they bounced and weaved, pushing forward with difficulty. It took them an hour to walk more than 1,000 meters and reach the spot they had chosen earlier. However, this time, Lei Xingfeng wasn't disappointed. It was actually a real restriction space. After walking for an hour, they had almost reached their limit. The restriction space here was operating too fast. This consumed a lot of Lei Xingfeng's energy. Xingfeng also didn't feel good. Lei Xingfeng gritted his teeth and said, "We made the right choice this time. As long as we can get in, we can rest. Come on." Xingfeng's sweat fell like rain. He couldn't answer at all. He just snorted to show that he had heard it. As long as there was a restriction space, Lei Xingfeng could always find a way to get in. Even if it was difficult, he still tried to find a way to get in with Xingfeng. The two of them were obviously more tired this time. The two of them sat on the ground and looked at each other. This way of walking was definitely going to kill them. Even Lei Xingfeng had the idea of forcing his way in. However, he knew in his heart that this restriction space was very powerful. It was definitely not a good idea to force his way in. Xingfeng said, "Should we continue?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Should we go back?" Xingfeng and Lei Xingfeng both smiled bitterly. They had come this far. It wasn't that they couldn't go back, but they really didn't want to. Lei Xingfeng said, "Let's continue. Anyway, we've come this far. Maybe we're just one step away. If we go back like this, I think it's a loss." Xingfeng patted his head hard and said, "I don't know why, but I'm actually so afraid here. Damn, let's continue. I don't believe there's a restriction space that we can't get through." The two of them encouraged each other. Lei Xingfeng rested for a while and observed more carefully. He determined the direction to go and found the next restriction space. There was only one such place. If it wasn't, then they would just go through it. It was impossible to find the second restriction space. After a good rest, the two of them set off again. Now, every time they set off, it gave them a lot of pressure because it was getting harder and harder to walk. Lei Xingfeng was in front, and Xingfeng was close to him. The two of them were like one person. They walked strangely towards their goal. If there was an outsider who saw their movements, they would be shocked to death or laughed to death. Their movements were really too funny. However, Lei Xingfeng and Xingfeng didn't feel strange at all. Their nerves were very tense, and they were very serious about their movements. It was really very difficult. The two of them couldn't walk in a straight line. They had to find a place to pass through, and it was very thrilling. This time, they walked for a longer time, almost 2 hours. Whether it was Lei Xingfeng or Xingfeng, they couldn't help but want to give up walking like this. It might be more comfortable to just walk straight and rely on their own strength. However, the two of them knew that they couldn't let their emotions affect their decisions at this time. Who knew what kind of terrifying thing would appear when the restriction space was activated? Last time, it was a fire dragon. What would happen this time? Lei Xingfeng and Xingfeng didn't want to try. If they provoked something that they couldn't deal with, the two of them would be in trouble. Unless it was absolutely necessary, the two of them still walked honestly. They hoped that they wouldn't touch the restriction space and not activate it. This was the safest way. Fortunately, there was another restriction space this time. This made Lei Xingfeng and Xingfeng relax a lot. In fact, the two of them had almost lost all hope at this point. However, they didn't expect to find a foothold. After entering the restriction space and resting, Lei Xingfeng observed again. Finally, Lei Xingfeng could only shake his head. He couldn't find any restriction space. He couldn't even find a suspected restriction space. He just stared blankly into the distance. Xingfeng asked, "What's wrong?" Lei Xingfeng smiled bitterly and said, "We have to force our way through this time." Xingfeng actually let out a long sigh of relief. He said, "Let's go. To be honest, I can't hold it anymore. It's better to force our way through." Actually, after Lei Xingfeng said that, he felt relieved. He didn't have to rack his brains to design a route and go through so much trouble to avoid the restriction space. He also couldn't bear it. Xing Feng smiled and said, "We still have to force our way through." Haha, it's better to force our way in from the beginning. Perhaps we would have already passed it by then. Lei Xingfeng said, "Don't underestimate this restriction space. If we force our way through, don't forget to go up when the time comes. Here, you can try your secret door. See if you can set the coordinates." Xing Feng said, "Let me try." After a short test, Xing Feng showed a helpless expression. He said, "No wonder. I can't set the coordinates at all. This restriction space is too much." Lei Xingfeng said, "I really admire this restriction space. It's formed naturally. To be honest, I don't believe it." Xing Feng said, "Is it man-made?" Lei Xingfeng also shook his head and said, "No. I can't find any traces of it being man-made. I can't figure out why it's like this." Xing Feng said, all right. I admit that I can't recognize this kind of restriction apart from the superficial ones. I'm not good enough." Lei Xingfeng said, "This time I can't hold your hand. I'll use a rope. It's better if it's sturdy. Otherwise, if it breaks, I can't save you." It wasn't that Xian Feng's strength was stronger than Xing Feng's, but Xian Feng was able to discern the direction and find a way out, while Xing Feng couldn't. If one were to fall into such a large formation, one would really die, no matter how strong Xing Feng was. Xing Feng didn't take out a rope, but a steel chain. The steel chain was as thick as an adult's thigh. It would be difficult for the real body to hold it. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng put it in his hidden luin space and said, "If something goes wrong, I'll throw the steel chain. At that time, you have to grab it. Before you grab it, you can't move. No matter how dangerous it is, you can't move. Otherwise, I won't be able to find you." Xing Feng said straightforwardly, "No problem." The two walked out again. This time, they followed Lei Xingfeng's instructions. The more distance they could move, the better. The power of the restriction space was stacked. If they didn't touch the restriction space, there wouldn't be any danger. But if they broke through, the more distance they moved, the more points they touched, and the stronger the restriction space would be. Chapter 764. To Lei Xingfeng's disbelief, he actually found another restriction blank spot. This kind of luck was hard to come by. With this restriction blank spot, he felt that he should be able to pass through the center of the restriction and move towards the edge. This way, even if he had to force his way through, his chances of success would increase by 30%. The two sat down to rest again. Lei Xingfeng kept muttering, luck is too good." This time, even Xing Feng was grinning from ear to ear. He said, very good. Maybe we can find another resting spot. Haha, this way, we really have hope of passing through." Lei Xingfeng squinted his eyes and looked into the distance. This time, he still couldn't see any signs. He knew that as he went deeper, the restrictions would become more complicated, and he would never be able to reach them. To be able to find a resting spot here, his luck was really good. If he didn't have a sudden inspiration and walked to the side, he wouldn't have found a restriction blank spot. Thinking about it made him happy. This meant that he could safely move forward for a while. Xing Feng said, "Do you see a resting spot?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Once in a critical moment, good luck will definitely help us. If we want to do it again, it will be extremely difficult. I don't have any hope that we can find another resting spot." Xing Feng laughed, "Who knows? If there is another chance, we will definitely pass through." Lei Xingfeng analyzed and observed carefully. He shook his head and said, "It will be very difficult. We really have to go through this time." Xing Feng said, "Oh, so you don't have any confidence. All right, we already planned to go through. This time, we have made a profit." He had a good mentality. If he could make a profit, he would make a profit. Lei Xingfeng said, "This time, let's rest a bit more. Then, we will try our best to go as far as possible. If we can't continue, we will force our way through." Xing Feng nodded and said, "That's it. Let's rest first. To be honest, this is really king tiring." Lei Xingfeng was actually even more tired. He didn't say much and just said, "I feel that the terrain has changed a bit. Did you notice?" Xing Feng said, "Yeah, it feels a bit uphill, but it's not that steep. If we don't pay attention, it will be hard to notice. Will it affect our progress? Lei Xingfeng said, I'm not sure either. I hope there won't be any obstacles. I also don't want the terrain to change too much. If the terrain is complicated and can form such a terrifying natural restriction, I really don't know what we will encounter. Xingfeng asked, will we encounter something dangerous or attack? Lei Xingfeng said, I don't know, but if the terrain is complicated, it will be more difficult for us to advance. Xingfeng said, our luck has always been good, so I believe we'll be successful. Lei Xingfeng shook his head and said, I don't want to pin my hopes on luck. Regardless of whether we are lucky or not, we have to pass through this restriction. Ever since I started learning about restrictions, I have never been truly trapped by a restriction. This strong confidence made Xingfeng feel much better. Both of them were prepared to force their way through. This time, they were really going to force their way through because there was no place to rest. If they wanted to stop, it would be completely hopeless. Lei Xingfeng walked in front, and Xingfeng followed behind. The two of them walked out of the empty spot of the restriction. The tension in their hearts surged up again. The two of them walked forward at the same pace. Lei Xingfeng was still very careful along the way. His only goal was to delay the time they had to force their way through and walk to the edge of the restriction as much as possible. 10 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, 3 hours. This time they walked very far. Because they were mentally prepared, the two of them didn't feel tired to the bone. Lei Xingfeng said hurriedly while avoiding the fast-moving restriction nodes, I can still hold on. How about you? Xingfeng was still sweating profusely. He said, I'm okay. I can still hold on. For the two of them, every step they took was a step closer to victory. They had to do their best. The two of them walked for another hour or so and arrived here. Lei Xingfeng was also dazzled. Lightning charged into his eyes from time to time. His eyes couldn't hold on any longer and tears kept flowing out. He knew that even if he still had energy left, his eyes couldn't take it anymore. Lei Xingfeng said in a deep voice, let's get ready to force our way through. Xingfeng said, okay, I'll release my real body first. Lei Xingfeng said, listen to my command. Release your real bodies together and run forward. 1, 2, 3. Release. Their seals flew out and their real bodies appeared. Lei Xingfeng suddenly threw out a thick steel rope and wrapped it around Xingfeng's waist. Then, the two of them started running and rushed forward. Extremely heavy footsteps could be heard as the two of them rushed forward. At this time, the seal finally reacted and the entire seal started to change rapidly. It was another fire seal. Lei Xingfeng shouted, I really don't understand why there are so many fire seals here. His voice was like thunder, reverberating through the earth. Even if his real body was speaking, his voice would be amplified by countless times. Because of the steel rope, Xingfeng and Lei Xingfeng didn't get separated. The surroundings changed again. This was a world of fire. The two of them were very close to each other. They could touch each other with just a raise of their hands. Lei Xingfeng knew that a steel rope might not be able to hold Xingfeng. The flames here could easily burn this thick steel rope. The two of them rushed forward quickly. Lei Xingfeng checked the direction from time to time. No matter if Xingfeng saw Lei Xingfeng turning or retreating, he followed obediently. He knew that the entire seal was an illusion. Only Lei Xingfeng wouldn't be confused by the illusion. The bigger the real body, the more seals it would trigger and the more attacks it would receive. At first, it was just a sea of fire. However, as the two of them moved forward, the sea of fire started to gather and form fire dragons that pounced on the two of them. Xingfeng blocked the attacks as he ran. He hurriedly asked, Feng, how far are we? Lei Xingfeng said, I don't know. I can't see through it. Xingfeng said, is it very far? Lei Xingfeng said, maybe it's very far, maybe it's very close. Who knows? Charge! He reached out and grabbed a fire dragon by the neck and threw it out with force. Xingfeng used a similar action and threw the fire dragon out. When the two of them were resting, they had discussed this problem. Rather than shatter the fire dragon, it would be better to drive it away. This was because once the fire dragon was shattered, it would form an even bigger fire dragon. And once the fire dragon grew bigger, its attack power would increase exponentially. This could be considered a small counterattack technique in the midst of seals. It was very useful. Fire dragons formed one after another. Soon, there were hundreds of fire dragons surrounding the two of them. The pressure was not small. Because there were so many fire dragons, the two of them were busy dealing with them. Xing Feng said, "This won't do. We still have to shatter some fire dragons. I'd rather face one big fire dragon than so many smaller fire dragons." This group of fire dragons blocked the two of them from moving forward. If they wanted to move forward, they had to shatter them. Lei Xingfeng said, "All right, let's get rid of them." The two of them punched and kicked as they moved forward with difficulty. Soon, the hundreds of fire dragons were all shattered. As they reformed, the two of them ran forward with all their might. Unfortunately, because their real bodies were too heavy, they did not run far before they were intercepted by another fire dragon. Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Kill it!" Boom! Boom! Flames shot in all directions. In an instant, the two of them exerted their strength at the same time and destroyed the fire dragon that had doubled in size. The two of them did not even look at it and continued running forward. The entire seal formation was agitated. The surrounding flames dyed everything red. As the fire dragons were shattered one after another, the entire world became hot. The flames turned from red to white, and the temperature rose rapidly. Lei Xingfeng's real body could feel the intense heat. He said, "We have to hurry." Xingfeng said, "I know, but I can't King hurry." Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Do your best." Xingfeng rose up and punched out. In an instant, a fire dragon that was pouncing over exploded, turning into a rain of fire. He took the opportunity to take 7 or 8 steps forward, and another fire dragon pounced over. With a kick, this fire dragon was also smashed to pieces. Lei Xingfeng said, "Go left." Xingfeng had already overtaken Lei Xingfeng and was leading the way. Lei Xingfeng could only shout at him and tell him where to go. Sometimes he went forward, sometimes he went backward, and sometimes he turned left and right. In any case, he did not walk in a straight line. However, in Lei Xingfeng's eyes, Xingfeng was walking in a straight line. He was secretly glad that he had this pair of magical eyes. Even if he was often stimulated to tears by the lightning, he was definitely a heaven-defying existence in the seal. No matter how the seal changed, he could completely see through it. No matter how big a seal was, as long as one was not confused, it would be limited no matter how big it was. One could always walk out. If one was confused by the seal, then it would be unavoidable to walk in circles. As he ran and attacked, Lei Xingfeng felt that he was about to reach the edge of the seal. He also knew that once he came into contact with the edge of the seal's attacks would become fiercer. The two divided the work. Xingfeng was in charge of attacking, while Lei Xingfeng was in charge of watching the path and covering Xingfeng's back. The two cooperated very well. So far, there was no threat. The fire dragons were shattered one by one. After the small fire dragons were shattered, they quickly merged with the other fire dragons. Gradually, the fire dragons grew bigger. After Lei Xingfeng and Xingfeng shattered a few more fire dragons, there were only 2 giant fire dragons left. They were still red in color, dancing and circling. From time to time, they would shoot out balls of fire and hit the real body. Lei Xingfeng said, "Try not to shatter these 2 fire dragons." Xingfeng did not ask why. He simply said, "Okay." Lei Xingfeng knew about the changes in the seal. If they shattered these 2 fire dragons, the following changes would make them very passive. These fire dragons could be said to be very tough, but they could also be said to be very fragile. As long as one attacked with full strength, it would not be difficult to shatter them. However, after shattering them, the new fire dragons would be more than twice as strong as the original fire dragons. This kind of endless increase in strength would give anyone a headache. Chapter 765. As the saying went, there was a limit to a person's strength. However, the power of a restriction could be continuously increased. This made people who were trapped in a restriction feel endless despair. They kept driving the fire dragons away so that the two of them could barely take a few steps forward. Then, they would have to fight again and continue their journey. This made them feel extremely helpless. Gradually, Lei Xingfeng started to feel tired. Lane also used up a lot of energy. From time to time, he would send out thick lightning bolts to slow down the fire dragons so that they could adjust their pace and direction at any time. This restriction was quite abnormal. Once they lost sight of it, it would turn back. They had to be vigilant at all times. However, it was difficult to grasp the balance between attacking and being attacked. In a moment of carelessness, Xing Feng shattered one of the fire dragons, and the remaining fire dragon fused with the flames of the previous one. In an instant, it grew even larger, reaching a size comparable to the fire dragon that he had seen in the seal previously. Xing Feng said, "Sai, I accidentally hit it too hard. It shattered." Lei Xingfeng said, "All right, it's fine if it shattered. Let's continue." He couldn't blame Xing Feng at all. Although he felt a little uneasy, he still wanted to continue moving forward. Only by leaving this restriction could they truly escape the fire dragon's attacks. This fire dragon was a little difficult to deal with. However, with Lei Xingfeng and Xing Feng's strength, they were still strong enough to deal with it. It was just that they didn't know when to stop. Xing Feng didn't have a choice. He had to keep driving away the fire dragon's entanglement and not shatter it. This made his hands and feet tied, and he was furious. It was also because of Lei Xingfeng's reminder. If Xing Feng had come by himself, he would have killed this fire dragon long ago. After fighting for about half an hour, Xing Feng said sullenly, "I really want to shatter this fire dragon." Lei Xingfeng suddenly laughed and said, "You can try." Xing Feng said in disbelief, "Really?" Lei Xingfeng said indifferently, "Really? Take a step back and then take 2 steps to the left." Xing Feng cheered and took a few steps according to Lei Xingfeng's instructions. When the giant fire dragon pounced again, Xing Feng was much more ruthless this time. His huge hand grabbed the fire dragon's head and forcefully pressed it down. Then he stepped on the fire dragon's head and smashed it. Following that, he punched the fire dragon and the fire dragon exploded. This was a huge explosion. Countless flames flew out, filling the entire sky with dazzling light. In an instant, Xian Feng was standing in the middle of the flames. The light from the explosion was so blinding that he had to close his eyes. Xing Feng couldn't help but curse. Damn it. The flames turned completely white. Hundreds of white fire dragons appeared. Xing Feng smashed one of them. His expression turned serious, and he said, "Oh my God, the temperature has increased." The fire dragons couldn't do anything to the two of them. However, they were a threat to the steel cable that connected them. Lei Xingfeng filled the cable with lightning. However, he forgot that Xing Feng was on the other end of the cable. He wanted to make the cable more durable. The moment the lightning entered, Xing Feng's huge body started to tremble. Lei Xingfeng realized that something was wrong. He stopped and said loudly, "I made a mistake. I'm sorry." Xing Feng rolled his eyes gloomily and said, "Your method won't work." As the two of them spoke, they attacked crazily. These white fire dragons were smashed one by one. There was no other way. They had to smash them. Otherwise, the steel cable would very likely melt. As long as a fire dragon coiled around the steel cable, the entire steel cable would turn into molten iron. With a boom, the two of them worked together and smashed hundreds of white fire dragons. The two of them took the opportunity to escape. Then, the destroyed fire dragons condensed again. This time, 10 white fire dragons condensed. They were 10 times bigger than before. At this time, the two of them were having a hard time resisting. Lei Xingfeng said, "Don't smash them all. They will get stronger." Xing Feng finally understood the dangers of the restriction. If Xian Feng didn't lead the way, then they would be easily trapped here. If they attacked the fire dragon now, and the fire dragon became more and more powerful, then they would really be unlucky. In a short time, 8 of the 10 fire dragons were destroyed. There were 2 left. The two of them didn't dare to continue smashing them. Suddenly, Lei Xingfeng shouted, We are close to the edge of the seal. Let's go. Xing Feng immediately felt energized. After all, the two of them had already exhausted a lot of energy. Fortunately, they were both very strong, so there would not be much of a problem for now. Heavy footsteps rang out as the two of them charged forward without caring about anything else. Even if the white flame dragons tried to block them or the restrictions tried to obstruct them, they all failed. According to Lei Xingfeng's estimation, they would be out of the seal in 10 steps at most. At this moment, the two white fire dragons suddenly exploded, shaking the two of them. This attack had caused some damage to their true bodies, but as the seals increased in size, their true bodies gradually recovered. Lei Xingfeng said, "Let's go." The two of them walked 7 or 8 steps. At this time, hundreds of blue fire dragons had formed around them. The temperature of the flames was so high that the two of them frowned. Lei Xingfeng said, "We can't let the fire dragons get close." Xing Feng also said they are dangerous. Before they get close, we have to destroy them no matter what. The two of them instinctively felt that they couldn't let the blue fire dragons get close to their true bodies. It was a dangerous feeling. Xing Feng said, "We have to speed up and destroy them as quickly as possible." At this time, the two of them didn't care about anything else and attacked crazily. They were surprised to find that when their true bodies' fists landed on the fire dragons, although they could destroy them, their fists would also burn. They had to rely on their seals to quickly replenish their energy. Only then would they be able to withstand the damage to their true bodies. Because there were too many fire dragons, the two of them didn't have time to communicate and could only attack crazily. The two of them had the same idea. When they destroyed all the blue fire dragons, there would be a short time for the fire dragons to reform. This time should be enough for them to get out. Boom, boom, boom. Countless blue flames splashed. These flames were enough to threaten their true bodies. When they landed on their true bodies, they would sizzle and burn small holes in their true bodies. They had to use their seal's energy to replenish it. The two of them felt more uneasy and attacked crazily. In a short while, the blue fire dragons were destroyed. Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Move to the left. Stop. Move to the right. Take a step back. Take 3 steps forward." The two of them moved to the left or right, front or back. The entire seal was operating at an extreme speed. They had to stop at a certain point to walk on the right path. Otherwise, if they didn't move forward, they would move backward. 2 blue fire dragons gradually condensed and suddenly shot out. One of them blocked their path, while the other attacked from behind. They were only a few more steps away from getting out. The 2 fire dragons attacked crazily. Lei Xingfeng said, "Use all your strength. Destroy them." There was no time to hesitate. Xing Feng knew that this was a critical moment. Therefore, he gathered all his strength and punched out. In an instant, his fist swelled up like a small hammer. It turned into a huge hammer and smashed onto the blue dragon's body. Lei Xingfeng also punched out. Countless electric arcs jumped on his fist, and his fist grew bigger. Boom! Xing Feng punched off half of the fire dragon's head. He was indeed an expert among experts. With this punch, the fire dragon was on the verge of death, but it didn't collapse immediately. However, Lei Xingfeng's punch didn't have such a good effect. It only pushed the fire dragon back a little. It didn't hurt the fire dragon at all. When the fire dragon pounced again, Xing Feng and Lei Xingfeng attacked at the same time. With a loud bang, the fire dragon was destroyed. Then, the fire dragon turned into countless blue flames and quickly gathered on the heavily injured fire dragon. Xing Feng said anxiously, "How do we go? Quick!" Seeing that the fire dragon was getting more and more powerful, this was a critical moment. Lei Xingfeng's eyes flickered with silver light. He shouted, "Take 3 steps forward." Boom, boom, boom. Their feet stomped on the ground, creating thunderous sounds. The two of them tried their best to take 3 steps forward. Not only were their true bodies heavy, but they were also restricted by the restrictions. It was really difficult for them to move. After taking 3 steps, the two of them really reached the edge of the restrictions. Lei Xingfeng said, "Take 1 step back, and we'll be out." Xing Feng didn't doubt his words. He knew that since Lei Xingfeng said so, it meant that he had absolute confidence. He said, "Okay." Lei Xingfeng said, "Why aren't you moving?" Xing Feng gritted his teeth and said, "I want to see how this fire dragon can change." After being tormented by the fire dragon, Xing Feng knew that it wouldn't be a problem to get out. He couldn't help but test the fire dragon. He wanted to see if he could resist it. Lei Xingfeng said, "Okay, I'll stand beside you." Xing Feng faced the fire dragon. His huge true body crouched slightly, looking like he was about to pounce. Lei Xingfeng was scared and said, "Don't move your feet." If he took one wrong step, he didn't doubt that the restrictions would teleport him to the center of the restrictions. He wouldn't even know. Xing Feng grinned and said, "Although I don't understand restrictions, I still know this when I follow you. Don't worry." Lei Xingfeng said, "It's coming." Originally, they only needed to take one step to get out of the restrictions. However, Xing Feng wanted to test it. In fact, Lei Xingfeng also wanted to see how the restrictions changed. This way, he could verify his conjecture. This would be very beneficial to his knowledge of restrictions. Of course, he wouldn't stop him. After the two blue fire dragons merged, they became even larger. They were even larger than the largest red fire dragon or white fire dragon. Their huge bodies were still floating in the air. This was an enlarged version of a fire snake. The scales on its body were all made up of flames. It had a strange beauty to it. It had a triangular head and deep blue eyes. Although it was an extremely hot fire dragon, it gave people a cold feeling. Chapter 766. Xing Feng's body suddenly expanded, but his feet didn't leave the ground. He knew that he couldn't move his feet carelessly. His two fists punched out and collided with the fire dragon. There was no technique to speak of in this kind of battle. It was a head-on collision, relying on one's own strength. It was either you or I who suppressed you. Every time Lei Xingfeng saw this kind of battle, he felt clumsy. In the battles he had seen in his previous life, it was rare to see such a situation. However, when a cultivator reached this level, it was basically impossible for any technique to be effective. For those who were weaker, even if their techniques were better, they would be finished after being hit by the opponent's fist. This world was so cruel. Strength determined life and death. The two fists landed on the fire dragon's body, but the fire dragon's tail lashed out and hit the huge true body. The fire dragon was knocked back, and Xing Feng's true body was also shaking violently. Lei Xingfeng supported him, but he couldn't move. Once he moved, who knew what the restriction would do? After stabilizing Xing Feng, Lei Xingfeng let out a sigh of relief. Xing Feng was extremely shocked. He had used almost all his strength in the previous attack, but he hadn't been able to destroy the fire dragon. He knew that things weren't good. He said, "Later, let's work together and beat the fire dragon again. Then we'll leave. We're not playing anymore." He couldn't continue probing. Xing Feng already understood that if he wasn't at the edge of this restriction, he probably wouldn't be able to resist a freak like the fire dragon. Xing Feng and Lei Xingfeng worked together and beat back the blue fire dragon. The two immediately left the restriction. The difference of one step was like the difference between heaven and earth. It was as if the entire world had changed. The two quickly withdrew their true bodies. The battle just now had consumed a lot of energy. They left their seals and absorbed a portion of the energy crystals to help their seals recover. Lei Xingfeng sat down and closed his eyes to rest. This was the first time this restriction had made him so tired. The piercing pain in his eyes gradually calmed down. After resting for a while, Lei Xingfeng stood up and saw Xing Feng looking at a place not far away. It was shrouded in a thick fog. Lei Xingfeng asked, "What's wrong?" Xing Feng said dejectedly, "It seems that we haven't arrived yet. There's an obstruction here. I don't know if it's a restriction." Lei Xingfeng only glanced at it and nodded. "That's right. It's a restriction. I can't see what restriction it is." The two of them were on the verge of collapsing. They had finally escaped, but they didn't expect to encounter another restriction. This was already the third one. They didn't know why there were so many layers of restrictions here, as if there was no end to them. What gave Xing Feng an even bigger headache was that this restriction was shrouded in mist, making it impossible to see the movement of the restriction nodes. And there was a faint black chi in the fog. It looked very strange. The two were stunned for a while. Xingfeng kept shaking her head. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but sigh. I really don't know what good things are in here. There are so many restrictions. If we go in and don't get any treasures, I'll go crazy. Xingfeng said, "Don't talk about you. I'm about to explode." Lei Xingfeng said, "Are we going to turn back now?" Xingfeng said, "Turn back? How? Can you open your secret door?" Lei Xingfeng smiled bitterly. "Of course not. There's not enough space to leave." Actually, he had a way to leave. He just needed to open the mirror world. But this was his secret. How could he say it? Xingfeng said, "So we have to move forward. There's no other choice." Lei Xingfeng could only nod. Since they couldn't retreat, they could only move forward. As for the restriction formation shrouded in fog, it was the next problem they had to overcome. After observing for a long time, Lei Xingfeng smiled bitterly. "This restriction, I can't break it. I don't even know what kind of restriction it is. It's neither fire nor ice. It doesn't seem to fit the attribute of restriction. Unless we go in and experience it for ourselves, we'll know what kind of restriction it is." Even with Lei Xingfeng's knowledge of restrictions, he couldn't distinguish it. Xingfeng was surprised. "Is this restriction very powerful?" he asked. Lei Xingfeng shook his head. "I can't say. It's hard to figure it out. We need to act according to the situation after entering the restriction." Xingfeng's heart sank. What did he mean by acting according to the situation? It meant that in an unprepared battle, they had to deal with the situation at the last minute. This was an unknown restriction. If they acted according to the situation, they would have to react in time. If they didn't react in time, Xingfeng couldn't predict the consequences. Should they go or not? The two of them didn't struggle with this question for long. Soon, they made a decision. After all, advancing was their only hope. If they retreated, not only would they have to go through another trial, just the two of them dodging the restriction nodes at the same time was enough to torture them to death. They didn't plan to turn back. This choice was too difficult. Just thinking about it made them fearful. Lei Xingfeng said, "Let's continue. However, I might not be able to help this time. We have to rely on our own strength." In other words, they had to force their way through. Xingfeng pondered for a long time. Finally, he nodded and said, "Then let's go." He knew that Xi and Feng might not be able to discern the direction in this kind of fog-filled restriction formation. They could only rely on their luck to charge through. If they managed to charge through, they would be lucky, but if they couldn't, then it would be hard to say. After making up their minds, they didn't think too much. Since they had to rely on their own strength to force their way through, they had to rest well and adjust themselves to the best state. Xingfeng hesitated and said, Feng, how confident are we in making it through this time?" Lei Xingfeng thought for a while and said, "I don't know. I really don't know. If it was before we came here, I would say that you have at least a 90% chance of making it through. However, after going through the last restriction, I realized that the restriction here is too strong. Just the attacks can be multiplied. This is something I have never seen before. Therefore, I have no idea how strong the next restriction will be." Xingfeng smiled bitterly. He was really stuck. Although he had made up his mind to break through this restriction, he still wanted to know how strong this restriction was. If it was a restriction that could kill them, then there was nothing to hesitate about. He would immediately turn around and leave. He wouldn't die for treasures. Lei Xingfeng said, "This restriction is a bit strange. It should be different from the previous two restrictions. Maybe it's more dangerous, or maybe it's not dangerous at all." Xingfeng gritted his teeth and said, "Hey boy, tell me both sides. Which one are you sure about? If it's easy, then it's easy. If it's not easy, then it's not easy. It makes me dizzy." Lei Xingfeng spread out his hands and said, "If I knew this from the beginning, I wouldn't have come. However, at this point, it seems that we don't have any other choice." Xingfeng said, "Well, it seems that God wants us to break through. Forget it. Don't think too much. We have to break through it." Lei Xingfeng didn't say anything. In fact, he wasn't as conflicted as Xingfeng. After all, he had a way out. He was completely different from Xingfeng, who was putting all his eggs in one basket. The reason why Xing Feng was so determined to break through was because Lei Xingfeng had also decided to break through. He was very clear about Lei Xingfeng's strength. Since Lei Xingfeng wasn't afraid, then he had nothing to be afraid of. However, Lei Xingfeng wouldn't say anything. He felt that he had already told Xing Feng everything he knew. Any decision he made was his own business. After resting, the two stood at the edge of the restriction. Lei Xingfeng said, "Do you want to go first, or should I?" Xing Feng said, "Of course. You go first. Do you want me to go first?" Lei Xingfeng nodded. This choice was within his expectations. No matter how fearless Xing Feng was, he still had some scruples when encountering a restriction. Xing Feng explained a little embarrassedly. "After all, you are familiar with restrictions." Lei Xingfeng said, "Okay, I will go first." After taking a step, Lei Xingfeng suddenly thought of a problem. He said, "Give me 3 days. After 3 days, whether I go out or not, you can force your way in." The reason why Lei Xingfeng told Xing Feng this was because he was afraid that Xing Feng would force his way in before he touched the restriction. If that happened, he would be in big trouble. He had 3 days. If he could find some gaps in the restriction during this time, he was confident that he could break through. Even though the restriction was shrouded in fog, Lei Xingfeng still had a way to see the restriction nodes around him. This gave him a slight chance. He didn't want to give up this chance. For him, this was the only chance to pass through this restriction. If he couldn't, he would have to force his way in. If he couldn't break through, he would have to go back to the mirror world to hide and completely give up on this place. No matter what treasures there were, he had to be alive to use them. If he was dead, then even the best treasures would be useless. Xing Feng nodded and said, "Okay, 3 days. Once 3 days have passed, I will rush in." At this point, it meant that they had to part ways. In this mysterious fantasy sky realm, there were very few people who could walk together. Lei Xingfeng could walk so far with Xing Feng, which was already a great thing. Xing Feng took a few steps back and sat down directly. He said, "If there's a chance, I believe that we will meet again. I hope you can succeed." The two of them had interacted for such a long time. There was a bit of camaraderie between them. Overall, Xing Feng could be considered a good friend, especially to Xian Feng, even though he was the one who caught Xian Feng. Lei Xingfeng was a little grateful for this. He said, "Senior, let me give you a suggestion. When you first enter, don't rush in. Instead, stand at the edge of the restriction. It's best to leave 1 foot outside and watch the changes of the restriction. At the same time, resist the attack of the restriction. See if there is any hope of defeating the restriction." Chapter 767. Xing Feng nodded. "All right, I'll listen to you." Lei Xingfeng said, "I have another suggestion. That is to destroy. Let's see if we can destroy the restriction here. If we can destroy a part of it, the restriction's power will decrease rapidly. At that time, we will have a chance." Xing Feng said, destroying it is difficult, but it is also a good idea. Brute force was suitable for people with high cultivation. Brute force was also a way to pass through the restriction, and it was also the choice of most people with high cultivation. Since they didn't understand it, then they would destroy it. Using brute force to pass through was a good solution for Xing Feng. Lei Xingfeng came to the edge of the restriction and carefully looked for a path to enter. Unfortunately, the fog was too thick, and he couldn't see clearly after a few steps. Even so, Lei Xingfeng didn't rush to enter. Instead, he compared and analyzed the restriction with the one in his memory. After a while, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. This time, he really had to rely on his own ability to enter. Xing Feng saw that Lei Xingfeng still hadn't entered and asked, "What's wrong?" Lei Xingfeng sighed, "It's just a simple fog state, and I can't do anything about it." "What a mysterious restriction." Xing Feng said, "You also have times when you are in trouble." Xian Feng spoke. "Of course, this restriction gave me a lot of inspiration. All right, I'm going in." As he spoke, he walked along the edge of the restriction, and after a dozen steps, he stepped into it. Lei Xingfeng instantly became nervous. At this time, Xing Feng shouted from behind, Remember, if you and I both come out smoothly and we can't meet inside, then go to the trading point. If I come out smoothly, then I will wait for you at the trading point for 20 days. Lei Xingfeng said loudly. All right. Xingfeng was also helpless. He hoped to get good treasures. If Lei Xingfeng got what he needed, as long as they could meet, then he would find a way to trade with him. He still had many good things in his hands, whether it was cultivation methods or all kinds of treasures. Lei Xingfeng needed a lot of them. Lei Xingfeng carefully avoided the restriction nodes. Because of the fog, he could only see a limited number of the restriction nodes. He couldn't predict the movement of the nodes and could only act according to the situation. This gave him very little time to react. He had to make timely evasive movements. This way, the speed of his advance would be extremely slow. Xingfeng watched Lei Xingfeng gradually disappear into the fog. He was still guessing that perhaps the entire restriction formation would explode soon. Xinfeng, on the other hand, danced as he moved forward. Due to the training from the previous two large restriction formations and the fact that he was alone, he didn't have much to worry about. His movements were even more intense and ecstatic. Many of his reactions were instinctive. Due to his deep knowledge of restrictions, there were many restrictions that could have hit him, but with a twist of his body, a turn, a raise of his hand, or a jump, he would be able to dodge them. Because the restriction wasn't activated, what he saw now was the most basic reality. The surrounding terrain was getting more and more complicated. From time to time, there would be huge gray-white stones. There were also many cracks under his feet. Some of the cracks were even more than 10 meters wide. The bottom was so dark that he couldn't see the bottom. When encountering such cracks, Lei Xingfeng could only retreat and then go around them. This wasted a lot of time and energy. Lei Xingfeng felt that it was very difficult to walk in this restriction formation. Not only did he have to be careful, but he also had to avoid the disadvantages of the terrain. After walking for a few hours, Lei Xingfeng felt that it was a little difficult to continue. What he wanted most now was to find a blank spot in the restriction formation where he could rest. Unfortunately, he couldn't see far and could only move forward blindly. After an entire day, Lei Xingfeng still couldn't find a blank spot. In other words, he couldn't rest at all. Tears flowed from his eyes. He knew that he couldn't hold on any longer. Just as Lei Xingfeng was about to give up, he finally found a dense restriction spot less than 5 meters away from him. At first, he was a little doubtful and thought that he wouldn't be so lucky. However, after he took 2 steps closer, he finally found that it was true. There really was a restriction blank spot. He was so excited that he almost roared. This restriction blank spot was very important to Lei Xingfeng. It gave him time to breathe and allowed him to safely walk further. However, this restriction blank spot was very difficult to enter. The restriction nodes around were not only moving fast, but there were also a lot of them. He racked his brains and struggled for half an hour before he could barely enter. This restriction blank spot was very small, less than 10 square meters. It was a mini blank spot. After Lei Xingfeng entered, he immediately collapsed on the ground. He set a coordinate and instantly returned to the mirror realm. If he continued to rest here, he would probably go crazy. After emerging from his courtyard in the mirror realm, Lei Xingfeng didn't say anything. Instead, he directly rushed to the small building on the side. He returned to his room and fell asleep. He was too tired. Wu Yang and the others were in the courtyard. When they saw Lei Xingfeng come out and saw Lei Xingfeng rush into the small building, they were all stunned. They didn't say a word and just watched. Thunderstorm said, "This kid, what is he doing?" Gucci said, "I don't know. It looks like he's in a hurry." "Oh, should we go up and take a look?" Thunderstorm said, "Everyone don't go. I'll go take a look." Wu Yang nodded. Okay. Thunderstorm strode over and carefully went upstairs. He found that Lei Xingfeng didn't even close the door. Then he heard loud snoring. In other words, Lei Xingfeng had fallen asleep in a very short time. How tired must he be to be like this? Thunderstorm stood at the door. His heart was full of questions, but he also knew that he shouldn't disturb Lei Xingfeng's sleep at this time. Although the mirror realm was very safe, Thunderstorm still sat at the door to guard Lei Xingfeng. After a while, Wu Yang and Guqi quietly went upstairs. Thunderstorm gestured for them to be silent. The two nodded and went to the door. They poked their heads out to take a look. Only then did they feel relieved and go back. When they returned to the wooden shed in the courtyard, Wu Yang said, "I don't know what a phone went through. Why is he so tired? Maybe he just went through a fierce battle?" Gucci said, "Don't guess. Let's wait for a phone to sleep first." "Right, tell someone to tell a phone to hurry up and cook. I think a phone must be hungry." Lei Xingfeng didn't sleep for long. He and Lei Xingfeng agreed that Xingfeng could enter the Great Formation in 3 days. He couldn't waste too much time, so after sleeping for half a day, he forced himself to get up. Then he saw Thunderstorm sitting at the door. He knew that the old man was guarding him. He said, "Ayi, let's go down." Thunderstorm said, "A phone, are you okay?" Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, I'm fine. Ayi, I'm just too tired. I'm fine." The two went downstairs and entered the wooden shed. Lei Xingfeng sat down and said, "Ancestor, Master, you're all here." Surrounded by familiar faces, Lei Xingfeng's tense nerves immediately relaxed. The nervousness he felt in the fantasy sky realm disappeared. Everyone greeted him in a mess. Lei Xingfeng smiled and nodded. At this moment, he understood how important the secret door was to him. Jean Depeng had already brought people to the table in front of Lei Xingfeng. Jean Depeng smiled and said, "A phone. Eat first, eat first." Lei Xingfeng said happily, "Thanks, Depeng. Your cultivation didn't improve much, but you got fatter." Jean Depeng said indifferently, "My hobby is not cultivation, it's eating. You know that." He had long been used to this place. He really liked it. There were no disputes, and he could get a lot of rare ingredients. The Mirror Realm was probably his paradise. Exai and Feng also knew that everyone had their own ambitions, and not everyone wanted to become an expert. Thunderstorm said, "A Feng, eat first. Let's talk after eating." Exai and Feng nodded and began to eat. He had long stopped caring about food when he was outside. As long as he could fill his stomach, he would eat anything. Most of the time, he would only eat some stewed meat and dried meat, as well as pancakes. He had gotten used to it, as he didn't have the time to care about food. Lei Xingfeng finished all the dishes on the table in a very short time. Lei Xingfeng wiped his greasy mouth and said contentedly, "Finally, I had a good meal. All right, Depeng, prepare some dry food and water for me. I want to take them with me." Jean Depeng smiled and said, "Don't worry, I've already prepared them. You can come whenever you want." Hee. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Good, Depeng is still thinking of me." Jean Depeng brought a large amount of dry food and water over with his people. Lei Xingfeng put away the dry food and water, as well as all kinds of stored daily necessities. He said, "I can't stay at home for too long. I have to leave soon." Then, he briefly described his experience in the fantasy sky realm. He added, "It's very dangerous there, so I have to go alone." Wu Yang was a little puzzled and said, "A phone. Did you advance again?" His senses were quite sharp. He immediately saw that Lei Xingfeng was different again. Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "I was very lucky. I advanced to high-level Monarch King in the fantasy sky realm." As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. This was a high-level Monarch King? This was too frightening. After a while, everyone was in an uproar. Wu Yang and the others shook their heads and sighed. Although it was comfortable to stay at home, their cultivation speed couldn't be compared to Lei Xingfeng's. Wu Yang said, "Good, our secret sect is getting stronger." Thunderstorm said, "Very good. Haha, very good." Gucci shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I'm not a qualified master. I'm so far behind my disciple." He felt gratified in his heart, but also a little embarrassed. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Master, I don't think so. You are my master and will always be my master. It has nothing to do with cultivation." Gucci said, "Yes, you were still a child back then. I didn't expect you to grow to this level." Chapter 768. Standing in the blank spot. Lei Xingfeng was quite afraid of this restriction. After leaving the mirror realm, he stood in a blank spot and didn't dare to step into the restriction. With the buffer of the mirror realm, his tense mood was eased. He didn't feel so impatient and anxious. For the time being, he could calmly face the restriction in front of him. There was still fog around him. Lei Xingfeng didn't know how big this restriction was, but he knew that he had to continue moving forward. He didn't have time to waste. Gritting his teeth, Lei Xingfeng stepped into the restriction again. It was really a torment. Every step consumed a lot of Lei Xingfeng's brain power to accurately determine the movement trajectory of the restriction nodes. Because there was a lot of fog around, Lei Xingfeng's judgment was greatly reduced. Therefore, he was even more nervous. His mind was stretched to the extreme, and his eyes were flickering with silver light. Every step took a lot of mental energy. This time, Lei Xingfeng didn't expect to find another resting spot. He knew that he was really lucky to find the blank spot before. It appeared when he was about to give up. This time, he probably wouldn't be so lucky. Since he couldn't find a chance to rest, Lei Xingfeng had to walk as far as possible. Once he touched the restriction, he could be closer to the edge of the restriction. His chances of getting out would also be higher. If he couldn't get through, then he would directly return to the mirror realm and wait for another opportunity to come in and try again. Along the way, Lei Xingfeng walked very carefully. This was also because of his pair of special eyes and his understanding of restrictions. Even with a lot of fog, he still walked a long distance. With every step, Lei Xingfeng felt a bit more gratified. He persevered like this. With the help of the mirror realm, Lei Xingfeng knew that he was walking in a straight line. He wasn't troubled by the complicated terrain here, nor was he misled. He kept moving forward. There was no restriction circle that could last forever, unless you couldn't break through the restriction circle after it was activated. Then, the most advanced restriction circle could last forever. You would be constantly attacked inside, and the surrounding environment would become completely unfamiliar. Then, you could only become a headless fly, bumping around everywhere, and finally being exhausted to death. On the other hand, Lei Xingfeng wouldn't get lost. What he was worried about was that he wasn't strong enough to deal with the damage caused by the restriction. Fortunately, he had advanced continuously, and his current strength was quite strong. According to Lei Xingfeng's own guess, he should be able to deal with the attack caused by the restriction. Therefore, although Lei Xingfeng was extremely nervous and focused, it wasn't because he was afraid of the forbidden formation. Instead, he hoped that he could take a few more steps and reduce the time of attack. That would be the best. At this point, Lei Xingfeng was also sweating profusely, not because he was tired, but because he was nervous. After persevering for more than half a day, Lei Xingfeng was finally hit by a moving restriction node. After touching the restriction node several times, the entire restriction was activated. In an instant, the entire environment changed drastically. What appeared now was an illusion caused by the restriction. It wasn't the original scenery, and the fog had all disappeared. However, Lei Xingfeng knew that he was still surrounded by various kinds of rolling fog that couldn't be seen clearly. It was as if it was dusk, and the surrounding visibility was lower. Although he couldn't see clearly, there seemed to be a large shadow in the distance. Lei Xingfeng knew that the restriction was still brewing. He immediately released his real body and rushed forward without hesitation. In an instant, countless restriction nodes were activated. Fortunately, he wasn't going in the wrong direction. He didn't care about the obstacles caused by the illusion and rushed forward recklessly. The huge palm slapped anything in its way, and a loud explosion sounded. He released the sword seal and grabbed it with both hands. Suddenly, the restriction attack appeared. It was a huge black shadow that pounced over crazily. It was bone-chilling, and when it collided with the real body, the chill was transmitted over. Lei Xingfeng's heart tightened slightly. He felt his real body trembling. In an instant, his real body suddenly emitted a large amount of electric arcs. Lei Xingfeng casually waved the sword seal, and suddenly, a thick thunderbolt appeared and struck towards the huge black shadow. It was actually a dark, elemental attack. Immediately, Lei Xingfeng was overjoyed. This was because the thunderbolt absolutely countered the dark elemental. When the thick thunderbolt struck the black shadow actually let out a sharp cry. It was so miserable that it made Lei Xingfeng's heart tremble. Countless black shadows swayed around, and under the dazzling thunderbolt, they suddenly appeared. These shadows also seemed to be formed by fog. They didn't have a specific shape, and were all strands of black fog that were bone-chilling. Once they pounced on the real body, if it wasn't protected by the thunderbolt, the real body would be corroded by the black shadows. When the black shadows pounced on the real body, or when they were swept by the sword seal, they would let out an ear-piercing howl and then quickly dissipate. This was also the power of the thunderbolt. His entire body was emitting thunderbolts, and those black shadows constantly circled around Lei Xingfeng. They seemed to have a certain level of intelligence, and were extremely afraid of thunderbolts. Because of the restriction, they had no choice but to pounce over in waves, and then they would be turned into ashes by the thunderbolt. Lei Xingfeng realized that the black shadows didn't affect his movement, so he didn't bother to attack the black shadows in the distance. He only destroyed the black shadows that dared to pounce over, and the black shadows that blocked his path. Along the way, Lei Xingfeng didn't feel any difficulty, but he felt a little strange. This restriction array was much easier to move through than the fire restriction array from before. In fact, what Lei Xingfeng didn't know was that, because he was a lightning-type cultivator, he naturally countered darkness-type cultivators. If it was someone else who tried to break through the array, it would be extremely difficult. Darkness-type attacks were never extremely fierce and would only consume the opponent's real body bit by bit. Cultivators of other attributes would have a headache if they encountered darkness-type attacks. The surroundings were getting darker and darker, and it was almost impossible to see his fingers in front of him. However, Lei Xingfeng's entire body emitted thunderbolts, and his entire body was a huge source of light, emitting a dazzling brilliance. A large number of black shadows were crushed, and the remaining black shadows merged with the other black shadows. Like the fire dragon, once a black shadow was crushed, it would merge with the other black shadows and strengthen the other black shadows. However, under Lei Xingfeng's attack, a large portion of these black shadows would disappear after being hit by the thunderbolt, so it affected the speed at which the other black shadows were strengthening. The thunderbolt didn't just crush the black shadows, but truly destroy them. As long as they were hit, the part that was hit would turn into nothingness and wouldn't be able to recover. Lei Xingfeng didn't feel that there were too many obstacles in front of him, and he charged forward fiercely. The restriction array tried to guide him a few times, but all of them failed. Lei Xingfeng had the right direction and wouldn't get lost at all. Forcing his way forward, the black shadows gradually became stronger. Often, a few black shadows would gather together and quickly merge together, forming an even bigger black shadow. As Lei Xingfeng advanced, these black shadows gradually turned from illusory to solid entities. However, they didn't have a uniform appearance. Some looked like star beasts, some looked like snakes, and some looked like unknown wild beasts. They had all sorts of strange appearances, and there were even some black shadows that had the appearance of a human's real body. Lei Xingfeng didn't care about the black shadows on the side. He only cared about the black shadows that were blocking his path. As long as they blocked his path, he would unleash a thunderbolt and an attack from his sword imprint. Lightning flickered and thunder rumbled. Exai and Foam quickly pushed a large distance away. Those black shadows, the closer they got, the more they didn't dare to pounce. After being intimidated by Exai and Foam's lightning, they didn't dare to pounce. Lei Xingfeng's heart relaxed. He thought to himself, if I knew it would be like this, I would have charged into the array directly from the start. This array seems very powerful, but it's actually very limited. As long as the black shadows didn't try to pounce on him, he wouldn't pay attention to them, and he wouldn't take the initiative to attack. With his understanding of restrictions, he knew that the more restrictions were triggered, the more powerful the restrictions would be. Even if his attribute could restrain the restriction array, he wouldn't continuously trigger it. That wouldn't be a wise choice. Lei Xingfeng knew how powerful restrictions were. Therefore, he wouldn't become complacent just because his progress was smooth. Finally, on the third day, Lei Xingfeng rushed out of the dark restriction array. As soon as he got out, he discovered that there was a large canyon in front of him. There were towering cliffs. Below the cliffs were gray-white rocks, but there were many bone fragments. There were human bones, foreign race bones, and even more bone fragments from star beasts. They covered the periphery of the canyon. He didn't know how they died here. After thinking about it carefully, Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but shudder. They should have succeeded in breaking through the array. It was only because they were corroded by the dark restriction that they died. Even if they rushed out of the array, they wouldn't be able to recover. Lei Xingfeng withdrew his true body and carefully inspected his body. There was actually nothing wrong with it. In other words, he had rushed out in perfect condition. Humans had the least amount of skeletons. Instead, they had the most amount of skeletons from star beasts. Due to the size of star beasts, their skeletons were especially obvious. The most shocking thing was that these skeletons were all jet black. They were especially obvious on the gray-white gravel. This was also the reason why Xian Feng was able to recognize so many bones at a glance. He came to the side of a human skeleton. It was a skeleton that was sitting cross-legged. Its clothes had already turned to dust and disappeared. The bones were black and shiny. It looked incomparably terrifying. The head was slightly lowered. Its two hands were resting on its knees. In the middle of its chest, there was a seal that was faintly glowing red. This was a fire seal. There were still traces of red light on it. Lei Xingfeng reached out to grab it. The fire seal landed in his palm. When the fire seal landed in Xian Feng's hand, the entire skeleton crumbled like dust, instantly turning into a pile of black dust. This fire seal was a high-level seal. Even if Lei Xingfeng couldn't use it, this fire seal was still a treasure. Lei Xingfeng instinctively felt that it was something good. That was why he kept it in his hidden Luin space. Lei Xingfeng walked around the entrance of the canyon. He collected a total of 7 seals. There were fire seals, wood seals, earth seals, and gold seals. They were all kept in his hidden Luin space. As for the other races, they basically didn't have any treasures. The bones of the star beasts were corroded by the dark restriction, so their bones were useless. Lei Xingfeng could only give up. Chapter 769. Actually, the 7 seals were also contaminated by the dark element. However, Lei Xingfeng had a way to get rid of it. He just had to use lightning to cleanse it once. After trying once, he successfully obtained a decent seal. Because those who could break through the dark element seals were all relatively powerful experts, their seals were definitely cultivated with great care. Who knew how many materials and treasures were used? These seals were very difficult to truly destroy. Once one reached the monarch grade, the seals themselves would be extremely valuable treasures. They were formed through countless years of cultivation and the accumulation of countless materials. It was just that Lei Xingfeng did not know how to use these seals. Lei Xingfeng finished tidying up and sat down to rest. The journey was actually very tiring. There was no need to think about cultivation. Lei Xingfeng purely wanted to rest his eyes. He closed his eyes and took out some dry rations to eat. At the same time, he relaxed his tired mind. His tense nerves finally calmed down and gradually relaxed. He suddenly felt much better. After eating a full meal and resting for a few hours, Lei Xingfeng looked back. This dark element seal was actually shaking violently. Suddenly, Lei Xingfeng understood. Xingfeng had broken through the seal. Xingfeng had broken through the seal. Lei Xingfeng did not have confidence in his heart. According to Xingfeng's strength, he should be able to break through. However, he should also be corroded by the dark element. If he could not withstand it, even if he broke through the seal, it would probably be a huge injury to him. However, Lei Xingfeng did not know if it would be serious enough to kill him. After hesitating for a while, Lei Xingfeng did not wait. He continued to walk towards the canyon. He looked up and saw that there were seals on the cliff. They were also layered with countless seal nodes. He knew that it was basically impossible to go up. Moreover, he did not plan to go up. Following the path, Lei Xingfeng walked into the canyon. The entrance of the canyon wasn't big and was restricted by the precipitous cliffs. Xi and Feng could only walk along the canyon entrance. This was the only path. Luckily, there weren't any restrictions on this path. Or more accurately, there were restrictions in the past, but now there weren't any, which meant that it had long been removed by someone. Others might not be able to see it, but Lei Xingfeng could see the remnant traces of the restriction. Although it was quite rare, he could still find the remnant traces and judge the power of the restriction. Along the way, Lei Xingfeng looked around. After walking for a while, he saw a relatively wide space. Lei Xingfeng stared blankly. This was so unreal. Within the canyon space, layers of light were emitted. Even Lei Xingfeng couldn't see clearly. He only felt that it was very complicated. What was this thing? He couldn't make out the structure. He only felt that there were countless flashes of light in front of him. The colors were extremely rich and were constantly changing. Countless colored shards. That was something Xi and Feng could only see more clearly after absorbing the lightning into his eyes. It was a bunch of strange things, all colored shards. The most peculiar thing was that these shards were constantly moving, which was why the light was constantly changing, as if it was a kaleidoscope. The colorful light mass was about 100 meters in diameter. It was abruptly suspended in midair. Lei Xingfeng looked at it helplessly because he couldn't understand what it was. However, he knew in his heart that it was definitely something good. There was one thing that was difficult for Lei Xingfeng. How was this thing to be collected? It looked like pieces of colorful glass that were constantly moving. He couldn't figure out what this thing was. Since he couldn't figure it out, Lei Xingfeng decided to try and see if he could forcefully take it out. Lei Xingfeng didn't dare to forcefully take it out. However, he could release his real body. Even if there was danger, his real body would be able to withstand it. He released his real body. The light mass was originally 100 meters in diameter. It was about 10 meters from the ground. Therefore, when he released his real body, the two were basically equal. Through the eyes of his real body, Lei Xingfeng could clearly see the rolling fragments in the light mass. Each fragment was the size of a table. He carefully reached out his hand. This hand was extremely large. Everything about his real body was incomparably large. He extended two thick fingers and carefully reached into the light mass. He quickly pinched a fragment and quickly withdrew it. In an instant, the red fragment quickly melted. Lei Xingfeng's real body's two fingers were dyed red. That thing actually disappeared. Lei Xingfeng was also stunned. What was this? Seemingly a little unwilling, Lei Xingfeng rubbed his two fingers. Then, he looked at his fingers that were glowing red. For a moment, he didn't know what to do. Withdrawing his real body, Lei Xingfeng found that the fingers of his real body were also glowing red. He then sat down to cultivate. He looked for a long time and couldn't find any changes. There seemed to be no changes. There were no problems with his cultivation. However, the colored light on his fingers was not fake. After thinking for a long time, Xi and Feng couldn't come up with an answer. Releasing his true body, Xi and Feng reached his hand into the ball of shards and scooped them up. Various colored shards fell into his hand. Some of them even landed on his arm, causing his entire arm and palm to be dyed in a myriad of colors. Lei Xingfeng had actually experienced it once. That was the seven-colored water. The seven-colored water was used to cleanse the seal. This seven-colored light was used to cleanse the real body. However, Lei Xingfeng had never seen or heard of it. It was his first time seeing the seven-colored light. Of course, he was at a loss. When his entire arm entered and was attached to by the colorful fragments, Lei Xingfeng felt a change. That was his arm had changed. It had become stronger. He could feel it in his heart. It was the same clear feeling when Lei Yin was cleansed. After confirming it, Lei Xingfeng immediately reacted. This thing was good for his real body. He immediately rushed into the light mass. In an instant, his huge body was like a magnet. The fragments around him swarmed over and hit his real body. Suddenly, Lei Xingfeng became a chaotic light mass. He even lifted his huge leg from time to time to let his entire leg and foot enter the light mass. The large fragments in the light mass quickly disappeared into Lei Xingfeng's real body. At this moment, Lei Xingfeng was intoxicated. For cultivators, especially high-level cultivators, the real body was their only combat weapon and a shell to protect themselves. Therefore, they had to cultivate it to be sturdy and durable. This thing also had differences in strength. After being cleansed by the seven-colored light, the toughness and strength of the whole real body would increase by at least several times. The benefits to cultivators were self-evident. Standing there and not wanting to leave, this feeling was really good. Lei Xingfeng had always been worried about the weakness of his real body. After all, his advancement speed was too fast. He didn't have the time to really train and cultivate his real body. He only maintained the Lei Xingfeng's real body that formed naturally after his advancement. Because his real body was of the thunder element, it was relatively strong. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng didn't pay too much attention to it. This time, he understood that the real body could also be trained and cultivated. In the past, he had always neglected this matter and instead spent materials and energy on the sword seal. He had really taken the wrong path. Gradually, the fragments stopped fusing and slid to the side when they touched his body. Lei Xingfeng knew that his real body could only absorb this much. Unless his real body advanced another level, then he could absorb more. As for this seven-colored light mass, he couldn't take it away. Fortunately, he had the mirror realm. As long as he accurately marked the location, he could still enter this place in the future. When he first cultivated his real body, it was just a shadow. As he advanced, this shadow began to solidify and was reflected by the seal. Lei Xingfeng had cultivated Lei Yin's real body and even had a human head astral beast's real body. It wasn't until he received guidance from Xingfeng that he regained his human form. When Lei Xingfeng advanced to a high-level monarch king, his real body completely reflected the appearance of his original body. This time, after being cleansed by the seven-colored light, his body changed again. Once his real body was released, it would emit seven-colored light. However, Lei Xingfeng knew that he could still improve. This improvement referred to his real body. In other words, if his real body was extremely strong, then the benefits he obtained this time would be even greater. Unfortunately, he had never paid much attention to his real body. Just by looking at his battles, he didn't release his real body to fight if he could. His real body needed to fight to grow bit by bit. Lei Xingfeng knew very well that he had gained a huge advantage this time. After being cleansed by the seven-colored water, Lei Yin's level rose. His real body, which was originally a little weak, had become much stronger. After being cleansed by the seven-colored light, his fighting strength had multiplied. One must know that the most important skill for a cultivator was fighting. In the outside world, a cultivator had to fight against the heavens, the earth, people, and astral beasts. All of these required great strength. This strength was the strength of the real body and the strength of the seal. This was the foundation of a cultivator. At this moment, Lei Xingfeng made up his mind to fight with his real body in the future. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.